I hope nobody's talking.
You funny, Wani. And again, I didn't hit mute. I don't know why my mute's off, but so here we go, ladies
Mute
and
is
gentlemen. Good evening.
off.
Yeah, like I didn't press mute. I was going to press mute to address what you said, but like I looked down and it magically turned the speaker again.
Uh-oh.
So yeah, we got some talking to do, ladies and gentlemen. We're I'm addressing this space was in direct correlation to the things I've heard our brother Tariq say, or rather, to things that John Lake Wazamo has to say about Black history that I heard on our brother Tariq space. Rather, I'm hearing this word and you know this phrase of art called Juan Crow. I think I've been teaching history for 15 years now. And you know, I don't ever recall hearing the phrase Juan Crow. So I did some researching and I can't find it anywhere. So the question of the day is, who started the civil rights movement? I'm going straight to the source, and so get a pen and paper because I'm gonna tell you exactly where it started, who started it, how it started, and why it started. And the second part of the question is history being colonized? You know what I'm saying? The colonization of history is a very dangerous thing. Where am I getting that from? I'm getting it from looking at history as a predictor of the future. If you look back at Nazi Germany, the um, the Jews, their history was colonized by German propagandists, by Nazi propagandists. I think Joseph Goebbels had a lot to do with the propagandization of their history. This false narrative of them um, being portrayed in a beast-like manner gave the persona that they were what Professor Noam Chomsky would call ungrateful victims. So, long story short, when everything fell apart in Weimar Germany and it plunged into Nazi Germany, according to Dr. Amos Wilson, human beings need somebody to blame. So, in essence, the Jews were set up as the scapegoat. They were set up as the blame, and I'm seeing that happen with us. Also, the rhetoric that John Lake was almost spreading is so dangerous. What he's doing with his rhetoric of I heard him say that not only did Latin Americans go through Juan Crow, I heard him say that it was even worse than ours. He said that they were at the bottom of the social hierarchy, which is not true. What that does is paint them as victims
Can
with respect to our. Go ahead,
I'm
Juan.
confused. Is he talking about border jumper people being treated badly, or who is he referring to? Because they have their own lands and they lost a war and they were pushed out. So is he talking about immigrants coming over here being treated badly, or is he talking about they were already here? Because I don't understand what he's talking about.
I don't think he understands what he's talking about. He's an imbecile, and I would love to talk to him on X. So if y'all know John Lake was
He
on, will
won't
tell him
he
I would
won't
like to have a debate
respond
with him.
because him and that other woman, when Biden won the election, this Latino broad came out. It was the Latino women that helped him win, and they're like, "What?" Because they tried to credit us for it, which it was us, unfortunately, idiots.
Mm.
But
Yep.
he also said a comment about Black Americans should fight for Hispanic people to get roles. Why would we do, like, we should, he said we should share a piece of the pie. It was just a phrase. How do you do that? How would, if I was winning a Grammy, how do I share the piece of a pie with a border jumper? Explain that to me, because what do I do? Just say I don't want this award, I want it split down the center? You don't share awards, number one, and they don't have anything to do with Hollywood. Go down to South America where they have a whole mega media for you to babble in your own language. Just because you're boring and nobody cares, you want to run up here and be something and then complain about all the role. They literally run up here to be in Hollywood and then complain that they have to portray a black person, Gina Torres, who says she didn't want to play black people while she is sucking on a black American man. And also, uh, they don't want to play white people. So you're coming to somebody else's reality and leaving your all Spanish reality where you can pretend to be white people down there and coming up here getting mad. Is that how I'm understanding this?
I love it, Wani, and that's exactly how our brother Dr. Claude Anderson understood it. If I may read a little bit of textual evidence from Dr. Claude Anderson, Dr. Claude Anderson says in 1990 census data, 85%, let me say that again, 85% of those listed as Hispanic also classified themselves as Caucasians. So, where's this Juan Crow coming from?
I-
Juan
I'll
Crow?
also say this: Black Americans pretended to be Hispanic, wore turbans. Why would they do that?
To get better
Thank
treatment.
you. That is why they did it. And these people babbling their mouths actually had special paperwork and pens so that they would not be discriminated against. There is no such thing as Juan Crow. You may have been treated badly because you wouldn't get the hell back across the border that you lost. You may have been treated badly for some other reason, but you certainly were not hunted around here. They didn't want you here because, hey, we were in a war with you and kicked you out.
We're looking at massive changes in this country. I'm foreseeing, looking at history as a predictor for the future. I'm looking at some fundamental changes start to happen. And ladies and gentlemen, I held this space early today because the changes that I'm witnessing are fucking dangerous. I can't always articulate what's on my mind, but I want to share something with you that I noticed on Joe Rogan's podcast. I love his podcast, by the way. I would like to have a podcast like his one day. But Joe showed the had a segment where he was talking about revisionist history, and the New York Times, which is the liberal, extreme right, extreme leftist liberal. And first and foremost, I'm not political. I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, but I'm just identifying it as such. Kind of like instruction manual, if you will. Had a heading the other day that I want to share with y'all. I'm putting it in the jumbotron right now. The heading says the Constitution is sacred. Period. Is it also dangerous? Holy shit! The New York Times is what I'm trying to say, ladies and gentlemen, and our brother Mark Carter has kind of hit on this better than I have. Is we're looking at a supra, supra, above. This Latin, it means above. We're looking at a supranational government. We're looking at a globalist agenda, and the New York Times dare and don't trust the shit out my mouth. Looking at jumbotron is saying that the Constitution, the one document that's holding this country together, it's the document that makes this country beautiful. Trust me on this one. It's the document that's given helped us get everything we got. Although some of that stuff was not intentional, it still stands. The New York Times is threatening the Constitution. It's asking, are our freedoms too much? That's what we are, ladies and gentlemen. Um, Along the lines of what Wani was saying, Dr. Anderson further says this ethnic group is the fastest growing population that is challenging blacks for numerical and political dominance as a minority, which it is not. This article was written in 1990, mind you. He also says Hispanics have enjoyed the benefits of having it both ways. First, they criticize white society for its disappropriate share of wealth and power. Then they classify themselves as Caucasians. So, given that fact, I don't know. I've never heard of a Juan Crow. That is dangerous. That is implying that we shared the burden during the Jim Crow era, which is not
They
true.
don't have to.
The first, go
I was
ahead.
just going to say they don't have to be here, though. This is what I'm trying to understand. Nobody can come here and say they shared a burden. How can you say I am a Cuban or a Mexican or any of those words pour out of your mouth and say you shared a burden? You voluntarily came somewhere. How are you sharing a burden? I don't understand it. Who is he talking about? Because he came here and then he lied about his background. So we don't know which uh, border jumping country he jumped over.
Yeah, and I also saw on Brother Tariq's page that Bill Biden passed an executive order to give Latin American serving institutions like a funding source. Like, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Like, why are we being skipped over like this? Like, am I missing something? Furthermore, John Lake Wazamo made an ignorant ass comment about the railroads. And I want to nip that in the bud right quick, if I may. According to Dr. Claude Anderson, the major purpose for building the railroad system across America was to move slave produced goods to domestic markets and the seaports. So stop right there. So the main purpose was to move shit we made for free. So criminals can sell the shit we made for free overseas. Got it? Dr. Anderson further says centuries of sale of slave produced cotton, tobacco, rice, and indigo have built the southern economy and sustained the northern businesses upon the American domestic and foreign trade base were based. In the use of blacks in America, historian Dan Lacey discussed how black labor subsidized the development and westward expansion of the railroads. Black people, we did the damn
What is he
railroads.
saying? They built the railroads?
I thought I heard some little comment like that.
No,
I thought
everybody's
I
claiming
could be
that, and they're
wrong.
all wrong because only 700 miles of track were built in the West. And that wasn't even all Chinese people. They couldn't do anything, they were lame.
And the Chinese people that did help, they were
They
getting
were
paid.
all
So let's get
slave
that shit
labor.
quick.
Irish people, whatever random people wanted to be paid low wages. And those people have nothing to do with the thousands of miles of full tracks that we built and the goods that went on those tracks. So you want me to read some quotes about their race since they're now trying to claim that they're a marginalized group, even though they came here to be marginalized. It makes me wonder about your IQ. You are immigrating somewhere to be marginalized? Is that what I'm understanding?
Wow, come on with it.
So here's one quote. Now, these are from their leaders. This is not random people on the internet. This is their leaders from the League of United Latin American Citizens. Says Latin Americans of Mexican descent belong to the Caucasian race and therefore white. Okay. I just want to say this before I read a few more quotes. Um, they're basically failed white people. A couple groups didn't make the cut. Okay. A couple of groups didn't make the cut. One of the groups that failed at being white are Hispanic people. And I'm going to tell you why. They failed at being white for two reasons. Reason number one, they have too many brown people in their group. And so you can't have a Sammy Sosa popping up talking about I'm white. That looks crazy. So that's reason number one. Reason number two is Hispanics fail at being white. And I hope they're listening so they can know how to improve their chances of being white. They also fail because they complain. Real white people that accept the failure of being a white subcaste don't complain because Greek people are not white, Portuguese people are not white, Italian people are not white, but they also don't complain. So they don't sit up there and bitch and moan when they don't get an Academy Award. They don't bitch and moan when they don't win a beauty contest. They don't say anything that I've ever heard. They just clap really, 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 really loud when they get an award, like my big fat Greek wedding or for The Godfather. But they don't complain. They take it on the chin and they do their duty as white supremacists and shut up. But these people are too loud and too boisterous to be white, and they won't tuck themselves neatly under whiteness. And like I said before, they can never be white because there's too many dark people in their range. So the Hispanics are number one. And the second group that failed to be white and tried hard and even was classified as white as well as the Hispanics are Arab people. Yes, you have failed to be white. Why? Because you keep blowing stuff up, because your color range is too dark, and because you have an anger toward Christianity. So you have also failed. So I don't know what these failed white people are going to do, besides bother us and pretend like they're suffering, but I guess we'll find out in the future.
Well, we have to look back at history. This is why history is so critical. What I want to do is peek back, if I may, at Dr. Howard Zinn, what he says about the Irish. Ladies and gentlemen, as I've said before, immigration has always been used as a weapon against foundational Black Americans. It started in the 1600s with John Oglethorpe. You can look up the Georgia Corporation. Basically, the short version of the story is when America was just a group of colonies, of 13 colonies, foundational Black Americans would join forces with the air quote Indians. Now, let me stop right there. When I was did a training at with the Marines in Paris Island years ago, I saw an old photograph of the Indians that were rounded up during the War of 18. I think it was a Spanish American War. It was a real photograph, and one of the commanding officers there said, he said, "Alon, we the fucking Native Americans." I said, "Sir," I looked up at that big ass picture and I saw afros with feathers. Like they looked just like us. Like it was no different. So that right there is evidence that history is being colonized, but I go back to that in a moment. So when the Native Americans, air quotes, and foundational Black American enslaved would when the enslaved would run away, they would keep running until they joined the Native Americans, and they would be amalgamated and married into the groups and stage counterattacks on the slave owners of the 13 colonies. Well, the 13 colonies ownership got so scared that they wrote home to mama and said, these darkies are killing us. What should we do? So the Queen of England looked to her top military strategist, a John Oglethorpe. There's a college named after him in Buckhead right now that a lot of Black people go to. I don't know why, called Oglethorpe. And Oglethorpe, to his credit for being a brilliant tactician, said, "You know what, Your Majesty? How about we send all the criminals, degenerates, and debtors, not my words, words of academic canon, to the Americas, to the New World. America didn't exist, to the New World, to provide a buffer class between whites and these Native Americans. And we make them a deal that we'll forgive their debt, forgive their crimes, if they protect the wealthy whites against the Native Americans." And that is how the state of Georgia was formed. So that was the first time that immigration was weaponized. The second time around was the Irish and Italians. Now, Dr. Howard Zinn says the immigrants fleeing from Ireland, I'm sorry, the immigrants from Ireland fleeing starvation there when the potato crop failed were coming to America now packed into old sailing ships. The stories of these ships differ only in detail from the accounts of the ships that earlier brought Black slaves and later German, Italian, and Russian immigrants. So there goes immigration being weaponized again. And lastly, Dr. Howard Zinn says, how could these new Irish immigrants, themselves poor and despised, become sympathetic with the Black slave who is becoming more and more the center of attention, the subject of agitation in the country? Indeed, the most working class activists at the time ignore the plight of the Blacks. Eli Moore, a New York trade union leader elected to Congress, argued in the House of Representatives against receiving abolitionist petitions. And he says racial hostility became an easy substitute for class frustration. That is the vitriol we're experiencing from Biden. Biden is not far detached from these Irish immigrants who came to America poor and despised. And as how Dr. Howard Zinn says on page 227 of his masterpiece, he basically says that the Irish despised us because we had it going on. So there, I think that's where all that vitriol from Biden is coming from. Midwest, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was gonna say I meant to tell you all a while ago because you brought up the railroads, but I was surprised none of you all brought up John Henry. Like it's been such a legend or a canon that we all know we were responsible for the railroads. And then what did you say, Wani? You brought up. I forget what you brought up. Oh, I forgot what you brought up. Let me just stand back.
Them, us pretending to be Hispanic. I'll give you the names of men who pretended to be Hispanic and became very successful. um, Anybody here who would say they were not of African descent, or not us, excuse me, could get a pass. Someone like Kofi Annan came and got his hair cut. And the man said, I don't cut nigger hair. And he said, well, I'm an African. I'm not a nigger. So we have that. We have so much proof to the contrary of these people being discriminated against. We could easily win in any argument. They would be crushed. They have no proof of anything. The only thing they have proof of is them running across the border and squatting out enough babies to barrage us with uterus power for the rest of our lives. That's the only skill set that they have, squatting out people from 9 years old by their uncles to their uh, 60 years old, 9 to 60. That's what we're up against. Nobody's having babies in that range. Here's another statement from them. Let the Negro fight his own battles. His problems are not mine. I don't want to ally with him. President Felix Tejera of the League of United Latin American Citizens. Um, Another one is, we are not and have never been a civil rights organization. Personally, I hate the word. And I've heard Asians say that they were against civil rights. I hate civil rights. Really? You don't like civilization because these people are uncivilized and that's why we needed civil rights. You seem to like the idea of civil rights when Frederick Douglass was unleashing those white hands from around your Chinese necks. But okay, you want to come over here and pretend like all the hard work is over and you don't have to do anything. Oh, please believe me, another wave of COVID and those hands will be around your neck again. And I won't be saying anything because you said there's no problem. So here's another issue. Let me read this real quick. Gina Torres, a Cuban, she said that the Black American roles are burdensome to her. I don't identify as Black, says Gina Torres. Then she says, to then learn to be whatever Black was, and then feel like I was alienating or that, remind me, the woman is illiterate, but I'm still going to try to learn to be whatever Black was and then feel like I was alienating that other part of myself, that Latina self she shares, to keep myself from just being sad all the time about not being able to fully experience the entirety of my. Is this woman crazy? What's the Latino part? You getting raped by Spanish people? That's the part you just can't stand not acting. How about you take your tail to Cuba and go act over there where they don't want you because you're brown? Okay? You're up here taking our roles and then having the audacity to vomit it back up in our face. That's what we're getting. We don't just get people that take positions that they shouldn't be in. We get people that take the position and then throw up in our face after we help them.
Exactly. So to the second part of this, is history being colonized? I'm gonna jump back to civil rights movement, who started it in a moment with evidence, but I wanted to share something with you, ladies and gentlemen. Um, Books are used to colonize. Education is a brainwash machine. And I really hate to come to this conclusion because my bread and butter's been made off of education for years now. But the truth is the truth. I'm going to share a couple pictures with you of how the use of a picture can be psychological warfare. I have some early Native American children um, that were drawn in a. This is a book on Native Americans you can get at Barnes and Noble, and I want you to see how this book denies just with a picture. Can a picture lie? I guess is a better question. Look at this picture, this little drawing picture. Now these are little Aboriginal Native American children, and notice how it's portraying their facial features and their hair. And that's not right. I've seen the pictures, and I hate that the Marines didn't let me. I should have snuck my doggone cell phone in that museum. If I had any sense, I would have did that, but I didn't. Um, these pictures are separating. They're deliberately used and strategically used, ladies and gentlemen, to separate the black identity, the black American identity, from anything Aboriginal to America. I'm gonna send you another picture. For years, when I worked at the Smithsonian, and knowing that Native Americans look, matter of fact, I'm a little too light to be a Native American, and knowing what real Native Americans look like, for years I was just totally confused as to why. Wait a minute, why are they showing them look like this? I'm gonna put a picture of some Native Americans in another part of the book where they just look straight.
Can I
They look Asian.
can I ask a quick question?
Go ahead.
What is this book about? Like, what's the?
The book is called "The Native American Warriors," and it's a
Well,
very popular
here's the issue.
reference book.
One of the issues is that if you is there is a lot of issues getting good information about who was here genetically
Hmm.
because of a political problem. It's a political blockade on that information. So when you say, wait a minute, how which tribes are here? Some scientists will say, yeah, there were some people that were of Australian type background that we found in Australia, and that is part of the group of people here. Those are founding people here. They'll say that, but then a political arm will come in and say, no, 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 no. And then leaders in the Native American community will take that as a direct attack on their legitimacy here. They don't really have legitimacy. If you look at their overall picture of them, some of them came over here long ago, but some of them are relatively new, to this area. So um, they have a challenge. They have a problem because they know these other people have been here longer. I'm sorry, but those people have been in this hemisphere, in the southern hemisphere, for 80,000 years. So they have had tens of thousands of years to find their way to the Americas versus other people who just started coming to the Americas a short time ago.
So it's all political. But here's my thing: is the truth is the truth. That why should like history be political? You see what I'm saying? Like that skews history. That turns history into something that it's not. It turns it into a weapon. And that's my point exactly. Is these books are weaponized against our children. They're saying, "Hey, you black man, uh, you have no home. Like this isn't your home. Your home is somewhere in Africa somewhere." Like to send you on a wild goose chase back in Africa where nobody wants to claim you've been there, done that. And you think that you're a visitor in your country because if you saw the real pictures of the quote unquote Native Americans or whatever, Austronesians, whatever, Melanesians, whatever you want to call us, they look just like us because they are us. And because this is our fucking home, excuse my French. Um, Moving right along, this is a heated subject for me. Who started the civil rights movement? Now, does anybody remember the direct quote that Joker, John Lake was almost said about what did he say about? Did he say that Latin Americans started the civil rights movement? I don't want to
Here's the
misquote him.
problem with whatever he said. The civil rights movement started with people like Harriet Tubman, abolitionists. So nothing he's going to say is going to trump the fact that we've been fighting to be treated as humans here the whole time. And they have nothing to do with anything. They are just like no different than, as you saw all the quotes from their leaders, they're no different than the Chinese. They sit back, they reap the benefits of what we did, just like the Jewish people, and then they pretend like they're the leaders of it. For either because they have political power to sit up and lie all day, or because they have the uterus numbers to sit up and barrage us with all kind of garbage, one way or another.
Well, I don't want to. I'm try to my best not to misquote people, but I'm gonna say it this way. I heard John Lake Wazamo say something on along the lines of um, Latin Americans started the civil rights movement. He said something like that. Or I can say better. John Lake Wazamo insinuated that Latin Americans started the civil rights movement. And I'm telling you, according to Professor Howard Zinn, that's not true.
Well,
The civil rights movement,
why would they
like,
though if
go ahead.
they're white? I mean, they have all these quotes about being
Exactly.
white. What are they fighting for? The right to be whiter? They want to be whiter than white people? I mean, what's the goal?
Exactly. That right there is a test to show how asinine his comment was. But if we peer back at history, like Wani said, the civil rights movement had its under beginnings with the Harriet Tubmans and the Frederick Douglasses. But officially, if you want to go to the legal standard, the civil rights movement was started by President Harry Truman. Nobody really talks about this, but I thought y'all might find this kind of interesting. According to Dr. Howard Zinn, President Harry Truman in late 1946 appointed a committee on civil rights. He did that, which recommended that the civil rights section of the Department of Justice be expanded. Now, why did Harry Truman do this? He did this completely and solely based on foundational Black Americans. Harry Truman served in the Army. He was an officer in the Army, and foundational Black Americans fought so fucking valiantly in World War II. I mean, y'all know stories of the Tuskegee Airmen, but there are countless stories of the Mumford Marines, the countless stories of Black soldiers um, that weren't allowed to be officers in their own brigade, dying under the leadership of a racist white officer, still fighting and dying. We fought so valiantly in World War II that Harry Truman said, hell no, we got to change this. We have to change this segregated military. According to Dr. Howard Zinn, but Truman, 4 months before the presidential election of 1948, challenged from the left in that election by Progressive Party candidate Henry Wallace, issued an executive order asking that the armed forces segregated in World War II institute policies of racial equality as rapidly as possible, which is what I just said. Truman said the Black man needs his fair chance in the military because those colored boys fought their ass off. It was an homage to us. So officially, somebody please tell John Lake was almost ignorant ass that Harry Truman initiated the civil rights movement directly because of Black soldiers, particularly the Tuskegee Airmen. Wish these folk would stop babbling. Sexy Raw, talk to
Real
us.
quick, hi, Sexy Raw. Real quick, let me just play this 1 minute clip, just in case nobody heard it. I'm sure a lot of people have heard it, but let me just play it real quick if you don't mind. Is that okay?
Yo, yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
It's the one from the PBS clip. Okay, so I'm gonna play the clip real quick.
While Dolores Huerta and others were fighting for civil liberties in the fields,
Fair
Chinos
use.
continued to be subjected to Jim Crow laws, also known as Juan Crow laws. And these Jim Crow laws were statutes that legalized segregation and made Latinos second-class citizens in their own country.
In the early 20th century, the Jim Crow laws were developed to separate Blacks from whites. Latinos had their own system of Jim Crow, which people now refer to as Juan Crow. They couldn't live in every neighborhood. They had to attend segregated schools, segregated churches.
So here we have the effects of Jim Crow laws in the Southwest, because we were in larger populations in the Southwest. And as you can see, the order is it's intense. No dogs, Negroes, or Mexicans. And if you're Mexican, you're at the bottom of it, even lower than dogs. While the law.
Okay. So they weren't lower than us. They're trying to make it seem
Wow.
like they were lower than us. So you got to watch with the wording of that. You could go ahead, Sexy Raw. I'm sorry for interrupting you, dog.
No, ma'am, I appreciate that because what I came up to say is Professor was making a point about FDR. And when you read the Black Cabinet, it goes and it expresses and explains how our people were in the federal government looking out for us during the time before FDR and with FDR throughout his terms. And another thing that I did not know, and I learned from that book, is that you're correct, Professor, we created civil rights. There were some attorneys from Harvard that utilized prima facie, FACIE, to begin laying the groundwork for civil rights. No one can claim that they started civil rights but us. No one can claim that. I'll land it there.
So, Sexy Raw, it was president. It was after FDR. It's President
Oh,
Harry
okay.
Truman.
Okay.
No, but you're right. Prima facie, that's Latin. That's a term you learn your first year in law school. It means on its face. Prima face. Prima means first. But on its at first glance. Prima facie means at first glance. So, but which lawyers say on its face. But it means when you first look at something. So, she's right. When Harry Truman initiated in 19, what is that? 19 Truman 4 years ago. Okay, yeah, in 1947, Truman challenged Henry Wallace, and he issued an executive order asking that armed forces segregate. I'm wrong. It was in 1946. In 1946, Truman appointed a commission on civil rights. So Truman did that. But like Sexy Ross said, a group of lawyers, when Truman opened that door, Truman, through executive order, opened the door for civil rights. And after Truman did that for Black Americans, for the Tuskegee Airmen, for Black men who and servicemen who fought and died in World War II, that was the reason why he did that. But when he did it, like Sexy Ross said, the floodgates opened. And in 1954, the courts followed. The lawyers start pushing other. Just think of a dam that somebody makes a crack in the dam and it starts leaking. Um, Truman did that for Black Americans. He cracked the dam, and then the lawyers came with the separate but equal, and Brown versus Board of Education. Everything else followed that. But my point in bringing that up is that was for foundational Black Americans. It was exclusively for us. It wasn't for anybody else. So somebody educate John Lake Wazamo and tell him to stop blabbing.
No, he knows what he's doing. He's just been appointed to be an antagonist. He's been saying things like this for a while now. He's been saying that we need to share a piece of the pie. Like I said earlier, how do you share a piece of the Grammys? You have a big mouth. Why don't you talk about what you want? Like Jada said, what did she say? Grammy so white or Academy so white, something so white. And I mean, like who's stopping his big mouth from saying it? Nobody wants to see him. Nobody wants to see them. They're boring. Okay, that's why you're not popular on anything. And then when you do get popular, you start a whole colorism fight because that darker skinned Mexican woman won an Academy Award and they called her every name in the book, monkeys and everything else. So that's what happens when they win something. So they don't deserve to win anything.
You think this could be an angle, like kind of angling on his part to get ahead of the reparations claim?
Of course.
Uh, for himself, how are
Wow.
Mexicans going to give reparations?
That's what I'm saying, because he's making up a false narrative is what I'm saying. Like he's trying to argue that, yeah, we were Juan Crow and blah. That's what I kind of
Hmm.
hear.
They
But
are attempting to
Uh,
say they need reparations too.
Yeah.
I read an article a
oh
couple
yeah,
weeks
they
ago.
are.
Yeah.
They keep going around saying that they
wow.
built this country. They keep saying that they are the real people who were indigenous to this country. They copy off of everything we do. and claim it as their own. So that's
Well,
what they're trying to do. They're trying to go ahead,
these
hon. I'm sorry.
things, that's okay. These things are not going to work again because, like I said earlier, how are you going to claim anyone did anything to you when you immigrated here? If you came here willingly, you are not subject to anything. You're not a part of the slavery, number one. And if you have slavery in your background, go talk to one of those Hispanic countries. Go speak to the Spanish because remember, you're Spanish. Uh, how are you going to get money for being enslaved when you want to be the people that did the enslaving? That's the part I don't understand. They're not going to play both sides with me. You wanted to be white. You failed at being white for the reasons that I explained earlier. They can never be white. And now they want to say they're enslaved after they went around. They have a thing called Spanish Harlem. What is that? There's no Spanish people over there. Uh, am I English? I'm about as English as they are Spanish.
Yep. There you go. And those of you who just added earlier, I gave a quote from Dr. Claude Anderson, who said in the 1990 census data, 85% of those listed as Hispanic also classified themselves as Caucasian. He says Hispanics have enjoyed the benefits of having it both ways. First, they criticize white society for disappropriate share of wealth and power. Then they classify themselves as Caucasian. These groups classify themselves as Caucasian for social purposes, then as minorities to qualify for government programs. That evidence comes from Black Labor, White Wealth by Dr. Claude Anderson. I advise everybody buy the book.
You know, I have it. I have it a million times over.
Yeah, I end up buying this stuff over and over again as well. Because it kind of disappears from his books tend to disappear from my office.
I hate it when I put
Oh
when
Lord.
I put bookmarks and highlight things in the book, and then I have to end up buying the same book again and making new highlights. But I've bought that
It,
book several times. That's one of the books that I give away to people. Black Labor.
it's a
Yeah.
good one. Yeah, so the colonization of history. I don't know where to begin with that. First and foremost, on a damn, I don't even know where to start. On a visual level, history's colonized. So you're teaching children about Native Americans per se. The way that Native Americans look in the book and on the movies is not how they looked. We've been over this. Furthermore, um, even Alexander Hamilton, who probably looked like me, if I showed you pictures of Alexander Hamilton um, off the internet, he looks more Caucasian than George Washington. That's intentional because if children in third grade, young black men, saw a leader in a suit forming the Constitution who look like us, imagine how many attorneys that would breed. Imagine how many senators that would breed. Just that visual. We want to see ourselves in the book. One of the reasons why black children, and I've done a study on this and I've wrote a whole book behind this. One of the reasons black children don't give a flying fuck about history or education is they don't see themselves in the book. When you're learning about math, you're learning about a white dude named Pythagoras, who himself said, "I learned this from the Egyptians." He said that when when I watched somebody, a close friend of mine, get sworn into medical school. She had to raise her right hand and take the Hippocratic oath after a white man named Hippocrates, who himself said, "I am a student of Imhotep," a little bitty Batwa black man. This is, and I'm telling y'all, ladies and gentlemen, this is not innocent. This is intentional to make our children hate ourselves. I got a really smart family member who, her mother decided to put into this rich Caucasian boarding school. I said, don't do it, don't do it. But nobody listens to me. even though I went to school for this shit. Nobody listens to me. She's going to get the best education. So this child who is just outrageously brilliant, just like genius level, I met up with her a year after she spent a year at this boarding school, and she was telling me she wanted to be. I say, so and so, what you want to be with your life? I want to be a cook. They got in her head and made her think that black people's position in life is to entertain, sing, dance, and cook. That's the game you playing with. And it's done so smooth that they have plausible deniability. I didn't mean it that way. It's just a book. Oh, it's just a picture. But when you take educational psychology, you see that expectations are everything. If you expect children to be leaders of society and you expect and you demand that, they're going to do it. But if you expect them to be the jook on the street dancing and rapping, they're going to do that too. The black, you had something to say?
What's going on, Professor Nikki Wani?
What's up, bro?
Uh, Lick, Liquizamo, whatever his name is. I think he need to talk to the essays at the bottom of Texas in near Galveston, cause they were claiming that they are part of the conquistadors, and they have claim to the United States based off where they was the first ones to so-called conquer the United States. So I think he need to talk to the rest of his little essay partners and see what's going on, because there's a lot of discrepancies when it comes down to their history. And I I was wondering, are they half Native Americans like us, or are they Hispanic? Like what are they? Because they
They're
claim a
claiming
lot of
that
groups.
they're claiming they're all claiming that their Spanish bullfighters are their granddaddies, and they just happen to live in a place where some indigenous people were hanging around. They don't claim this. Um, and then some of them will claim, but if you go over anywhere near the Mayan ruins, they'll all be Mayan all of a sudden. You go over to the Aztec room, all of a sudden, oh, you are my Aztec roots. They get real proud all of a sudden. It's interesting to watch because the same guy that told me he was Spanish, literally, oh no, I'm Spanish. I just work over here. As soon as we got over to that oh, I have strong Mayan roots. How? You just said you were Spanish. Spanish people aren't Mayan. Do you even know what a Spanish person is, dummy? Because they're all illiterate.
Well, that's the frustrating thing, Wani, in room, as being a black man. Like, do y'all realize we're the only group that can't do that? Like, you know how many ethnic groups I've been around that goes in and out of, being this, being that. We couldn't even try to say, oh, I'm this. We're the only group that's forced to deal with who we are. You know what I'm saying? And we're not ashamed of that. It's just I'm not ashamed of who I am. I love who I am, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm so sick and tired of being around people who are this conveniently, or like Dr. Claude Anderson put it a lot better than me. What did Claude say? He said, da, 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 da. He said this ethnic group, no. He said Hispanics have enjoyed the benefit of having it both ways. First, they criticize white society for disappropriate share of wealth and power. Then they classify themselves as Caucasian. These groups classify themselves as Caucasian for social purposes, then as minorities to qualify for government programs. Like so many groups do that, go in and out. Or I'm oppressed. No, I'm not oppressed. I'm oppressed. No, I'm not oppressed. It gives me a headache. Kanye.
Yeah, what's going on, man? It's a convenience thing for them. Just like another group of people, their complexion allows them to label themselves as dominant society. Then they're allowed to use their religion as something else, which I think is strange. Not like to pretend like everybody can just see the difference. So yeah, no, it's a joke in itself, and it's a way to get ahead. I mean, we can't take a step back and say we're part of any group at all. We got to be on apologetically us at all times. Like you said, I have no problem with that, but it does make us look at why I'm for y'all. It makes me look at people like, damn, you ain't got no sense of pride, wheel your way. But it is what it is. And when it comes to those people south of the border, I find it amazing. Right? They're so proud of the Alamo, and they say history was told wrong and blah blah blah. Um, no, you guys didn't. have land taken from you, lost in war. That's literally how this goes. You lost the war, ran draws lines. This is what it is. They lost, they moved on. Now we playing that game, and technically, Britain is owned by Belgium and all other places. So it's really not that deep. They lost, but like you say, anytime we do something, they try to muddy our waters by copy and pasting. Like you let them say, "Oh, I seen a tweet." It's like, man, y'all don't even say essay no more. Y'all just drop the N word like y'all rappers shit. Like what happened to that? So anytime we do something, everybody wants to steal it. Everybody wants to be us. Everybody wants to be cool. But I do think it's important that we stand up and say, no, you, we, us, and that's fine. How y'all doing tonight? My bad. I got to speak.
Love it, Kanye. Appreciate you. So I don't in my spaces I don't just whine about, not saying anybody else does, but we come up with solutions. And my solutions are based on textual evidence. So I was always taught if you stand on the shoulder of giants, you can see further. So the biggest solution I've heard was from Dr. Claude Anderson. Dr. Claude Anderson says, quote, now that black labor is non-essential and expendable, blacks are as a group are vulnerable and expendable. That's true. Our saving grace for the last 200 years have been America needed excess labor. Well, with the signing of NAFTA by a very questionable person named Bill Clinton, that those labor intensive jobs have been shipped overseas. It was done when I was a little child in the 90s. So now we're vulnerable. So, Dr. Anderson says, instead of an empowerment plan, new generations of blacks have inherited the vestiges of a failed 1960s strategy. Hell yeah, it failed. Three major failings deserve highlighting. So, first, we need to identify that our black leadership mistakenly believed that by removing Jim Crow symbols, that racism would effectively die. That was a failure. Second, according to Dr. Anderson, they thought integration would make them equal and give them control of resources and power. That was a failure. But this is the third one. This is the key right here. I'm not going to read all of it. I'm going to read some of it. Dr. Anderson says, third, they failed to construct long-term institutions with long-term goals that can transcend generational lines and produce a never-ending flow of competent, well-informed new talent. Dr. Anderson said it. We need a school, ladies and gentlemen. We need to come together and form shit. Use me. I know a lot about this stuff. We need to form an institution. I would say we need a pre-K through. We need three of them. We need a pre-K through 5, and we need a K. We need a middle school and a high school, and we need to. It needs to be funded by us. Maybe reparations money as well, but we need to start manufacturing the type of foundational Black American that we want to see. And only we can do it. We don't need outside help with this. Institutions is our main problems. That's where the baby boomers failed us, is they didn't set up institutions for us. Dr. Anderson lastly says, young blacks must have a public policy and a plan for direction. All segments of the community, churches, schools, businesses, and community organizations must be involved in formulating and implementing the plan, but the plan must be coordinated nationally by an institute with intellectual infrastructure. Um, yeah. When we get our reparations, y'all holler at me. Let's get to forming this institution for our children. So, in conclusion, the civil rights movement was started by um, President Harry Truman on behalf of black soldiers who had fought in a segregated military. You have to keep in mind that the Tuskegee Airmen, if anybody doesn't know what the Tuskegee Airmen did, the Air Force didn't exist. It was called the Army Air Corps, and the Army Air Corps would send bombers over Germany. They were called a B-17. They had B-24s, but these bombers were real slow and vulnerable. They were armed with machine gunners, but it was real slow, and the Germans would go up there and turn them into coffins, just kill them. Basically white boys, white men, white officers flew the B-17. I haven't read of any black squadrons of the bombers, the B-17s. It was top of the line. Um, they would fly up there in groups of 10. I think 10. The flights would be 10 airmen two pilot, a pilot, co-pilot, and 8 crew. And I'll tell you something interesting about Dr. Howard Zinn, the book I read from a lot, because Dr. Howard Zinn was a bombardier navigator on a B-17. Well, anyway, the B-17s were very vulnerable and slow, and the Germans would pick them off, and you know, it's horror stories of how they were dying at 10,000, 20,000 feet, just having horrible deaths. Well, the B-17s were supposed to be escorted by fighter planes. These fighter planes were P-47 Lightning and a later P-51 Mustang, like little fighters, one-seat fighters. And the initial squadrons to escort the B-17s to Germany and back were full of white pilots. And the initial squadrons of white pilots would only hang out with the B-17s when they had enough fuel to know they would definitely make it back. So basically, the white pilots would hang with the B-17s, and halfway there, they say, "See you later, dude. I got to go home and refuel." And the moment they left, guess what the Germans would do? Go up there and just destroy those pilots and destroy the bomber pilot. Well, a group of black men from Tuskegee, uh, said got the job. They call them red tail devils because the back of the plane was painted red. Tuskegee's color is red. That's why it's red. But they would the black men got that job of bomber escort, and none of the black men left. If the black men were going to run out of fuel, they said, "Fuck it, we're going to be with y'all from base to the target and back. If we run out of fuel, send somebody to get us." And the numbers of the mortality rate of B-17 pilots dramatically was cut in
They didn't lose a
half.
single one.
So yeah, 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 yeah. So I mean, that you have to understand the type of impact that made on President Truman, himself a soldier who fought in World War I. That amount of bravery and valiantry did not go unnoticed, and that fucking bravery is why the civil rights movement was initiated by Harry Truman. Just never forget that. Um, Now, a little off topic thing. And if I'm blabbing too much, y'all tell me. Dr. Howard Zinn, the book I've been reading out of, which is one of the best books on American history, it was written by a B-17 bomber, Dr. Howard Zinn. So Howard was a B-17 bomber on flying over Germany, and Howard said he loved being in the Army Air Corps. He just loved it, and he ended up on the GI Bill going to Columbia and getting his PhD or whatever. And he said he's real proud of his service, and he said he was sitting in a lecture at Columbia University, and one of his professors at Columbia was German. Stop right there. Now, in another space, I told you that the Nazis, a lot of those Nazi scientists took over Columbia, the academia, and a lot of the isms, a lot of the problems we're dealing with right now that's destroying our community, feminism. I'm gonna be codified because I don't want to get in trouble, but y'all know where I'm going with this. A lot of these ideas that are destructive and non-procreative came out of Columbia. Columbia had teachers college, which was the best school education. Columbia kind of wags the dog on the standard across the country. Barack Obama went to Columbia, but I'm gonna leave that alone. Um, anyway, Dr. Howard Zinn was sitting in a lecture at Columbia with a German professor, and the German professor was talking about Dresden, an area that Howard went over and led a bombing raid on Dresden. And the German professor, Howard, began to brag of, "Yeah, I stuck it to the Germans. I was a pilot. I was a bomber, and I fucked the Germans up. Fuck them." And he said, his professor said, "Young man, where did you bomb?" And Howard back then said, "Well, I led the bombing raid over Dresden." And the professor said, "Come talk with me for a little bit." And they sat down. And the professor said, "What were you bombing in Dresden?" And he said, "I was bombing a factory that made military supplies." He said, "Oh, okay, you were." And he says, "Were you aware that the bombs you were dropping on that factory, um, the stuff made in that factory was made by children? You aware that you killed 100,000 fucking children?" And Howard Zinn almost dropped out of school behind that. And Howard said that, telling him the truth. This is the power of the truth. And I promise I'm going to shut up. But the power of the truth is you had somebody like Howard Zinn, who was gung ho about all the killing he did in World War II. being sat down by a professor who told him that the bombs that he ordered to drop were dropped on 100,000 children who were just making ball bearings. That shocked Howard Zinn and made him question the narrative that he was told. You see, Howard was told that he was killing the enemy, right? He's killing children. And the book we're reading out right now is a byproduct of Howard Zinn almost dropping out of Columbia because he found out that he murdered a bunch of kids. And Howard making a promise with himself that from now on, he would, to the best of his ability, seek out the truth in everything he did. I thought that was powerful. I want to share that with y'all. Kanye, come on.
Yeah, that Dresden bomb was pretty bad. If I'm not mistaken, they thought they were invincible because there was a rumor going around that Churchill's grandmother lived in Dresden. So they thought they wasn't gonna bomb it. And Bomber Command gave the go ahead for that. World War II is my favorite war. I know way too much about this shit. But Dresden was a beautiful place though. It was almost like the Paris of Germany if you think.
Yeah, beautiful. Families, man. They fucking wiped out a bunch of families. You know, I know I'm not supposed to feel sorry for the Germans, but when you hurting kids, that kind of gets my attention. World War II, we need more academic scholarship done on the black involvement. There are so many foundational black American stories in World War II, like Josephine Baker. This is kind of getting off the. Well, no, this is on topic because history being colonized. Let's talk about some history being colonized. Do y'all know that when Weimar Germany fell and Nazi Germany rose, the first people they start killing in those concentration camps were blacks. It was the order was Africans or blacks, gays, and then the Jews. So I'm bringing that up because our dear sister Josephine Baker was a singer over there, and Josephine Baker almost got killed in one. She was like, no, 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 I'm a singer. They didn't give a fuck. They thought they're in World War One, Germany had a bunch of Africans fight in World War One for them. They were from Algeria, I think is a country. And when Germany lost the war, the Algerians tethered in Germany. They said, "Fuck it, I'm not going back to Africa." Sound familiar? They said we're going to move to Germany. So the German government allowed them to marry German women, and there were whole neighborhoods of mixed children. You know what I'm saying? And Josephine Baker got caught up in that. They thought she was one of them, and they wasn't trying to hear what she had to say. Go ahead, the black.
Yeah, they were called the Rhineland Bastards. It's a good book about that too. Uh, World War II kind of confused me because it's a lot of discrepancies. Like the when they made the fake Paris to trick the Germans, and it's something very interesting about that because I'm from Texas. I study a lot of Texas history, and that same week, because we got a Paris, Texas down here with an Eiffel Tower. Coincidentally, it just got a cowboy hat on top of it. But the same week that the Germans was bombing uh the fake Paris that the French made, uh Paris, Texas was destroyed. You know what I'm saying? By a fire and a racial uprising. What the newspapers say about it, kind of like the Tulsa massacre. And the more I think of the timeline of World War II, it's the same time that we was having a lot of racial uprisings here in America. And another funny coincidence. I wanted to say this the couple of last week when you had a space talking about a little bit going into the war. The Jack Johnson, okay, he had a fight overseas in France, and the same day that he won, the same night he won in France, coincidentally, the next morning, the Prince Ferdinand was shot and assassinated. That's what popped off World War II. And if you know about Jack Johnson, every time he won a fight, it started a racial uprising, and white people went out and hung black people. So to me, I feel like Jack Johnson was the real cause of World War II. They just blamed it on the Belgians and say it was because at the same time that's when they was fighting over scrambling for Africa they was trying to finish they dealings with World War I and the scramble of Africa. But when it come down to World War I, that's when we was having the Western expansion, the manifest destiny, and the South was turning into the West. Cause that's somewhere why we split Fort Worth and Dallas down here in Texas, and Dallas is considered the end of the old South, the end of Dixie, and Fort Worth is considered the beginning of the West. But I'll leave that right now.
Well, that brother, I don't think Jack. That's interesting. I like the timeline. That sounds right, but that's not Jack Johnson winning that fight is not what got Ferdinand killed. If you want to know, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, brother, look up Albert Pike, Pike. He has a book called Morals and Dogma. Check this shit out. So Albert was an occultist. I mean, he was a Confederate general, um, an attorney, an occultist. Like he was into some shit. Albert was. I don't even know where to begin with him. Well, anyway,
He was a
Albert was
masochist.
heavily into the occult. I don't. I was trying not to say it.
I know that's why I said it for
Yeah.
you.
Okay. Well, Albert wrote a book on the New World Order. Like, how do you take over the planet? And in his book, now he wrote this shit way before World War One. He wrote this book in the 1800s. And in his book, he gave a three-part plan to take over the world. And he said the first thing you need to do is overthrow the Russians. And our sister Wani's kind of hit on this before, and I've done some research on this lately. There's a lot of heroicism in old Russia. Um, the old Russians, that whole Russian oligarchy, they were the good guys, believe it or not. Well, long story short, Albert Pike said first thing you need to do is overthrow Russia and replace their oligarchy with communism. Now, communism, if you do some research on that, Marxism is what I meant to say. Same difference. If you do some research on Karl Marx, you'll find out that Karl Marx was an occultist. He was a Luciferian. Um, he like worshiped the devil. I have a quote by Karl Marx somewhere. If I can find it, is that it? This might be it right here. There it is. Y'all look at this. Look at this quote by Karl Marx. I'm the type of dude that just has random quotes on deck. But check this out. Karl Marx's favorite quote was a quote from Faust that talked about Satan. But his favorite quote was, hold on, everything that exists deserves to die. That was his philosophy. Is he believed he was a Luciferian? Well, there is some speculation that Karl Marx developed his baby, the Marxist doctrine, for a Luciferian group. And I'm gonna speak codified on this, but if y'all look through Karl Marx's lineage, you'll find out something very interesting about his family lineage. I'm gonna leave that right there. Well, mysteriously, Albert Pike said to use Marxism to replace the Russian religious oligarchy. They believe heavily in the original story of the Charis, the Christ, um, with the Black Madonna, that type of thing. Well, Albert Pike then said once you overthrow the Russian government, the second part of the plan is you need to overthrow the Germans and replace the German hierarchy um, with I don't want to cancel my page, but with another group. Got it? And he said, you need to get this group of people a homeland. Y'all know what I'm talking about? After that, he said the third part of the plan would be to pit not Christians, I'm sorry, pit Muslims and Jews against each other and have a battle in the homeland. While that battle is raging, you need to raise nihilism in the West. And when nihilism crescendos to the highest possible point, you need to introduce the people of the West, America, to the real savior. You see where I'm going with this? And if you follow that, how in the fuck did he know his plan was 75% correct? exactly what he said happened. The Russian government was overthrown and replaced with Marxism. I mean, how did he know this? The only thing that hadn't happened yet is an all-out war between Islam and Judaism. And I mean, right now we got people coming into office that are completely nihilistic. you know, we have potential people, a potential candidate coming in office that's outrageously nihilistic, fits right into the plan. But I know I had to put on my tinfoil kufi. Um,
That's why they're
it's just food
cheating
for
to
thought.
make sure that person wins.
I'm telling you, all that twerking, and I mean, just look at the people who are supporting her. Like, my God, like, what did Sexy Red say? Talking about her private parts and shit. I'm like, this is like a presidential race. Why are you talking this way? Children are watching
Wait a minute,
this.
who was saying that?
Sexy Red, she said somebody help me out. Sexy Red said something about her private part being
She
dang, I don't
said,
want to
"Don't
get it
tell me
wrong.
what to do with." She put a vote. I
Oh
voted
yeah.
sticker on each butt cheek and said, "Don't tell me what to do with my coochie." That's what she said with her nasty tail.
I put it in a purple pill.
Children are watching
Somebody
this.
needs to manage it because she sure ain't doing it.
That's nihilism. That's 100% nihilistic. I'm gonna do what the fuck I want. And guess what? That's Luciferian doctrine, ladies and gentlemen.
Do
What
what
did
thou wilt.
do what you beat me to it, Wani. Do what thou
Ooh.
willst. Y'all see where I'm going with this? We're in the last stages of the plan.
That's fine. You can do what you want, but there's limits when you start spreading diseases around. That's when there are limits to doing whatever you want. We already discussed that with the freedom of speech. You can't run in a theater and say, yeah, and make everyone run out. So you can't
Yeah,
say, I
that's
want to
right.
have sex with everyone and then give everybody HIV.
Yeah, it's this shit's real deep, man. I forgot why that. I forgot how it was explained to me once how nihilism fits into Luciferian doctrine. It looks like something, but it's not. It's something else. To us, it's made to look like, man, just do what you want, have a good time, party. But it's really kind of like taking you out of your zone as a sentient being and making you no higher than an animal to insult the creator. It's deep as fuck when you look into it. And a lot of people were involved up in that shit. Y'all want to you want to get your mind blown, go on the what's that shit called, the National Archives, the United States National Site, and type in something like um George Washington. I use math in my things. George Washington plus Snyder, Frederick Snyder. So George Washington, the National Archives has documents, from the this archived, obviously. Well, there's a letter on that shit from George Washington. There was a German, here goes the Germans again, who wanted to be an American when America was first liberated or created, whatever you want to call it. And he was a man of wealth, German man with money. His name was G.W. Snyder. And he got his money and was coming to America to become a naturalized citizen in this new land. And he was approached by a strange group of people in cloaks and shit, who were in a secret society, who basically they tapped him to join their secret society. I bet y'all can guess what his name. And anyway, GW loved the idea of America so much that he ran to George Washington to snitch, and he wrote the letter. It's in the archives, and I'm paraphrasing it, but he says something like, "Dear President Washington, I wanna warn you. There's a group that's coming to America to overthrow it, and really to overthrow America and take over the world, and just do the stuff we were talking about to lower man and make him no more than an animal and insult the supreme being, blah blah blah." And George Washington writes him back in the letters up there. George Washington say some shit like, "Oh yeah, I heard about that group, and I know all about their plot to take over America and raise the devil. I know all about it, but I never read the book you were talking about." So stop right there. If you do deductive reasoning, you're like, how the fuck you knew about that and you ain't read the book? Well, because George Washington was all up in that shit, man.
Deductive
You
reasoning
know what I'm
is a bitch.
saying?
I mean, it works.
It's a
Yeah.
bitch. Yeah, so yeah.
Professor,
I
what
put
do
it in
you
the
know about
jumbotron.
Aleister Crowley?
Huh?
What do you know about Aleister Crowley?
I don't know much.
I know about him.
Yeah, I didn't want to
What,
out
what
you
do you
like
want
that,
to?
but
Speak
What do
on.
you want to know? What do you want to know about him?
Whatever you know.
He just got very interested in, it's a very popular thing back in the day. Madame Blavatsky and all of those people were, um, you know, doing things, we'll say, to get information they might maybe should not have had. And he became a very good magician. He became good at drawing pentagrams on the ground and drawing entities into the pentagram and getting them to say stuff. And but he had to do things to appease them. They had things they wanted him to do, or else they wouldn't tell him anything.
yeah, it's I challenge you to type in Google orders of angel or different orders, and you'll see there's an order of angel of there's a power and there's a principality. They're different. Uh all angels are not good. We know that. Some angels fell, as some books say. And some of these people are in touch with these entities. And if you look at a picture of a principality, they're kind of like attorneys. You sign contracts, from what I'm told. You sign contracts with them, you know, to get what? Power, which is granted to you by power. So, yeah, these
But
people into shit they ain't supposed to be in.
they do, because yeah, they don't know what they're playing with, and they always repeat every time they say that they spoke to an angel or an entity, they go down in flames. He went out looking like a lunatic. Joan of Arc said that an angel came to her and gave her a magic thing. Well, then where did that person go? Why did you get burned on the stake? Why didn't you even get a decent death? Um, every time they do that, who's the guy who founded the Mormon church? He talked to an angel. He
Joseph
got
Smith.
beaten to death by the town. Hey, these
Wow.
people, or whatever they are that we're doing these deals with, are not fun. I mean, it is like, wow. Every time you do something with them or try to make a deal with them, it's just like I Dream It. Everything you need to know is on I Dream a Genie. Okay? Everything you need to know about the way they do business is on I Dream a Genie. Just turn it on and watch the reruns. Everything you get. That's why that guy was running around. No, 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 no. Don't do any. I don't want anything. I don't even want a new necktie from you, Genie. Why? Because it's going to choke him. Um, it never works out. So it's just best to leave it alone.
Yeah, you see that tragic story with musicians. I was one of my guilty pleasures is a white rock group from my childhood called Alice in Chains, which was just the most brilliant rock and roll group ever. If you don't like them, you hating. But I was looking at the story of the main character of Alice, I mean the main singer of Alice in Chains, and I was like, "Oh, gotcha." Seventh Ward.
Hey, how y'all doing?
What's up,
Hey,
brother?
you talk about Alice and change. Yeah, you're gonna wind up a big old pile of them bones. Uh, yeah, you need to talk about these societies. Have y'all ever seen the movie Eyes Wide Shut?
Yes.
Okay,
I hadn't finished
okay,
it, but yeah, go ahead.
How do you
Heard some
not
okay,
interesting things
finish
about
it?
it.
okay. If you haven't, okay,
It
I'm not
came
gonna
out when I
spoil
I
it.
was like in
mean,
middle school,
how
and
do you stop in the middle?
well, I was too young. It came out and it was a big hubbub, and I was immature. I didn't get it, and then I got older and was like, you know what, I want to watch it, and I couldn't find it anywhere.
Oh,
I
So
think you got it.
so
I
I'm gonna
think you
have
can
to.
get it on Max. I think they even because the original movie was censored for the U.S. release because of the sexual depictions in the movie. But I think if
You mean
I
the
but I
flat
think
butts?
hmm?
You mean the flat butts?
Yeah,
That
and
was
the
very
well,
offensive.
I'm yeah, there I'm okay, I'm not going there. But
I went
the
there.
yeah, have a nice trip. But but the guy who directed the movie, Stanley Kubrick, he after like after he put that movie in the can, he died under mysterious circumstances. He died in his
Yeah,
sleep.
that's what I wanted to comment on is Stanley was connected to society. He's real. He's an insider.
Yeah,
He's a member of that group,
another one of his
and
another one of his
go ahead.
movies is Clockwork Orange, and
I love it.
yeah, and in that movie he kind of hints at clergy abuse, which I'm surprised that didn't get him put a price on his head.
I thought Clockwork Orange was kind of like that MK Ultra stuff.
Yeah,
Wait,
but
which one
yeah,
hinted? Which
yeah,
one
but
hinted at clergy abuse?
yeah, because when Alex DeLarge goes to jail, he forms a relationship with the jail priest, and the jail priest says, "I know how you you know I forget, I haven't seen the movie in a while, but he says like I know how you feel about I'm paraphrasing
That's
sexually."
on clock.
So they were
That's on Clockwork Orange.
Yeah,
yeah
Clockwork Orange is wonderful.
Okay.
if you see the movie, Alex DeLarge, he goes to jail because he smashes a big dildo in a woman's face. I'm not making that up. He kills her, and he goes to jail,
It's
and
true.
he he starts to work with the jail priest, and they don't do anything. They the guy says, I know how you feel sexually, and in so few words, if you see the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Well, the interesting thing about Stanley Kubrick, like those of you who are kind of in the dark, Stanley Kubrick was the director of Clockwork Orange and Eyes Wide Shut. And I was a big Stanley Kubrick fan. I was a big nerd in high school. I had watched Clockwork Orange over and over again. And me and my dad would sit up and watch 2001 Space Odyssey. Well, I tried to watch it. I was like 15 or something when it came out. I couldn't get it. I was like, I don't understand this movie. This is silly. But I didn't have context to understand it. Well, anyway, I was watching a documentary that said Stanley Kubrick was trying to warn, like no cap, trying to warn the world about that specific secret society. You know what I'm saying? With Clockwork, well, not Clockwork, or with Eyes Wide Shut, and that they deleted 15 minutes out the movie that nobody's ever seen. So I'm really curious that's a movie I look forward to watching.
Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah, I
I
think
Yeah,
I'd
watched
and
it
understand it better.
once, felt offended, and didn't put it in my private collection.
okay, yeah,
Why
I
were
don't
you
want to.
offended?
I don't remember. I know there's a lot of white flat butts, and I didn't like that. Was just like confirming what I already knew, so it's kind of not groundbreaking.
Yeah, and if you, I don't know if I'm sorry if I'm spoiling the movie for your professor, but at the end of the movie, it kind of hints that the society kidnaps his daughter. It kind of hints at it. It doesn't show it, but you see the daughter wanders off, and you see two guys, well dressed, and they come in, and they hint that they kidnap his daughter.
It's real fascinating. I was in another space. We geeked completely out the other day, and we're talking about Atlantis and whatnot. And I found some rare scholarship that talked about a group called the Sons of Belial. And long story short, I was like, oh, I bet you it's different spelling, but semantically, I bet you is associated with Baal. Were they worshiping Baal in Clockwork Orange?
Everybody's worshiping Baal.
True,
On
true.
all the
That
religions are.
you mean Baal in the
Bull.
Bible where they?
Bull is really
Oh,
bull, but they just don't want to spell properly. Okay? We're worshiping a
Yeah,
bull.
the bull. That's true.
And then it was in the Bible they said Yahweh, he's a golden calf, a bull. Why are we worshiping bulls? Anybody know? It's a little bit strange.
I'm all ears. I was
Baal is a
from what I
bull,
was.
Moloch's a bull. The other
I
lady,
thought Moloch was an owl.
well, he represents as a bull sometimes. And Yahweh
Wow.
is a golden calf, a bull.
So Yahweh is the golden
Yeah,
calf. Wow.
because here's the trick bag. Um, when they were, this is a funny thing about the people that are fighting now, they're all the same people. So they're they're not different. Let me tell you why. They're all Canaanites, right? And they were worshiping Baal. Let me get this woman's name real quick. They were worshiping Baal, Moloch, El, and Yahweh. Those are all bulls. El's a
Wow.
bull, Baal's a bull, Moloch's a bull, Yahweh's a golden calf. But this fertility deity is like the female part of the fertility. These are all fertility things. The bull means fertility. Asherah is a fertility, a deity. So everything that the Canaanites were worshiping was based on fertility. They didn't have like a more sophisticated pantheon of gods, like God of education and God of truth and God of medicine. They didn't have all that stuff. It was all fertility. And so when this one group said, we don't want to worship El, Baal, Moloch, and Asherah anymore, we're going to branch off and do something of our own. We're going to worship Yahweh, just one God. That's still a bull, though. It, how does it change because you branched off? How do you ethnically change? And how does what you're worshiping change? Yahweh was a bull when they were Canaanites, and he's a bull today.
Well, this actually fits into the topic. Is history being colonized? I know pretty. I've been doing a lot of scholarship on the Memphite theology, the earliest and first religion. I'm sorry, I said religion. I meant spiritual system. It wasn't a religion that was practiced in Egypt, and it was before what Wani's talking about. So the Memphite theology, just to keep it short, was the Holy Trinity. It was the feminine, it was a masculine aspect of an Almighty God plus a feminine aspect of an Almighty God equals a child. Father, mother, son. We call the father Asar, which referred to as Osiris. The European renamed Osiris. The mother's name was Aset, which the European renamed Isis, and the son was Heru, which some people say turned into Jesus the Christ. Well, anyway, long story short, I could talk about that for hours, but long story short, after the Egyptian or the Kemetic dynasty fell, um, there was a group of people Wani just mentioned who were basically the Canaanites, Babylonians. They're all in the same soup. Mesopotamians. Their religious story is totally different than father, mother, child, father, son, Holy Ghost, however you want to look at it. Their story is the fallen ones came to visit them. Five fallen winged ones, which they call the Anunnaki, that means the winged ones, came to visit the Canaanites, or the Babylonians, and basically gave them everything you wanted, just told you about. You had to sacrifice children and shit like that. I always thought that was kind of fascinating how, in a way, and I'm not a biblical scholar, but that kind of like sounds real familiar. It sounds like, like Satan was kicked out of heaven and took a third of the angels with him. The Babylonian story sounds like that. The Anunnaki guy, and then the Anunnaki, one of the gods' names is straight up. There's one called Sin AI, which is interesting, but one of them's name is Beelzebub. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's a demon, isn't
Hmm. They're
it?
all going to end
he
up
did
being
he?
demons. Trust me, just do the genealogy. It always goes back
They
to
all demons.
bull. What I don't understand about the bull is that either we're worshiping the bull, like the whole Abrahamic religion, or either we're killing the bull, like the Khoisan did this astral um, mock killing, I guess, of a bull in the astral world. The bull was sacrificed. And of course, you know that Spanish people are bull crazy. They worship bulls. They're a bull cult. They do bull sacrifices still. They do running with the bulls still. They do bull fights still. They have in caves in their area, there are bulls all over the caves. So they're just saturated in that bull cult, which is really fascinating. They have never let go of that early, before Christianity, aspect of their religion. Of course, we know the Indians worship, guess who? Bull, the cow. What is with the bull?
See, I was wrong, but I mean, I thought it had to deal with the constellation of Taurus. You think it's something else?
It's a lot of bulls. I can't
Yeah,
think
there's
of
only one
I
constellation.
can't think of any group that does not have a bull cult running through the background of it.
And some people said that Osiris was the bull. Like I think it was an association. Maybe he manifested as a bull. I don't know, Wani. I
They
want to do some
well,
research
a
on it.
lot of them do show up as bulls, but some of them are persistently bulls. So some of them shape shift into bulls if they want to, or they can do a statue of them. This is what Yahweh was doing. It was like, oh, sometimes it's a bull, sometimes not. But no, it's a bull. Go ahead, to Black.
I want to know, do you think that's why during the medieval times they torture people in the brazen bull, and that's how
Mm,
some
yeah,
European cultures end up eating,
you know
becoming
what?
cannibals?
You know what? That's a good question. I tried to relate the brazen bull, which is a bull, again, of all the animals that you could shape it into to do a human sacrifice, you pick a bull. Okay? But no, they say that's not directly related, but I'm thinking it is, because it's always a bull.
Very fascinating.
It is. Hey,
Jackson,
Jackson.
talk to us.
Hey, family, Grand Rising. I just retweeted the space. I'm late today. Grand Rising, Professor. Hey, Nikki. Hey, Juan. Grand
Hi,
Rising,
What's up,
family.
Jackson.
Jackson?
Hey, I wanted to ask now, if I'm late, of course, it's your space. Cut me off, if you will. Have you all mentioned or has anybody asked about the lynching of Emmett Till and that kicking off a lot of the civil rights movements?
Well, no, nobody brought it up, but Emmett Till um, hit the significance and the bravery of his mother. What that, and you're right, it did. It the Emmett Till issue kind of forced foundational Black Americans to face reality because Emmett Till's mama was so, think of the bravery of that to number one look at your child like that, but she demanded that he had an open casket funeral to show the world. She knew what she was doing. She was weaponizing her body, the body of her son, to kind of galvanize the Black community.
Yes, that was
Um,
so hard for her to do. I mean, she's got to
it was
look
break.
at that for the rest of her life. Once the picture is out, it's out. and you never know when it's going to pop up. But that she did sacrifice herself because most people would like to sweep that whole mess under the table.
They said he smelled so awful that people were throwing up at the funeral, like just from sheer smell. Like, but so it was just outright. His mom was brave as fuck for that.
His mother was a real one.
On the flip
She was a
side,
real one.
what real 100. On the flip side, his uncle, man, like I remember when I learned about Mose Wright in ninth grade, like I wanted to go to the graveyard and beat the shit out of his ass.
What happened?
Cause
I mean, forgot the story. I heard it, but I forgot what happened.
he stayed with his family member in Mississippi, and with his uncle, name was Mose Wright. A big old the motherfucker looked like Percy Earl, and he whistled at allegedly. I don't know if the story is true or not. I think the white woman thought Emmett was cute. That's what I think. That's what I think that was about. Cause Emmett, anyway, whatever happened between Emmett and that white lady happened, and she told the white men that this N word whistled at me or whatnot, and they showed up like five Klansmen, what I'm saying, white men with shotguns showed up at his house and said we want the boy right now, and he gave them up. He's like, Emmett, you got to go with them,
Oh yeah, I
man.
forgot.
I would have died right along if that was my nephew. We
I
both would have just died.
forgot.
One of them would have came. I would have took one of their ass with me, just one.
It's crazy that Joy Reid tried to use that as an example on why the black man is not useful within the family structure when
Oh
when
my.
she was arguing
What?
with Brian Donalds.
Joy Reid said that?
Yeah, she used that as
Oh my
example
God.
with
That
other
woman needs to
occasions.
go.
What did she say exactly?
Uh, I can put the clip in the jumbotron, but I'm insinuating, but she was basically giving different examples on incidents where white men came within the household and took the child and the father and hung them.
To show how inadequate we are,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, basically.
This
Man,
whore
these
is from the whore, not hoe. This whore is from the Congo. Her men slaughtered 30 million people because a few white boys from Belgium said to do it. Are you kidding me? This is why these people need to be under my heel forever and never come out.
never come out from under your heel.
No. Even
Wow.
if I have on bedroom slippers, you get under those.
Yeah, it's that goes back to that agenda of immigration. If it goes back, never forget, ladies and gentlemen, the Georgia Corporation under Captain Oglethorpe. If we can sit down intellectually and just each one teach one and talk about that game plan like we're looking at a football game, the shit happens over and over again, gets remixed. What I'm talking about is the same play. The play of Captain Oglethorpe saying, Your Majesty, let me send our criminals, our degenerates to America, to the colonies, to serve as a buffer and let them fight with the blacks. That's been done over and over again. Send immigrants to America to fight and compete with the blacks. Therefore, they serve as a buffer. So the elites don't even have to fuck with us because we're battling with Joy Reid's ass. Why is she in our business? Why is she commenting on us in the first place? We have nothing to do with her. And let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. I went to Harvard University. I didn't graduate from Harvard, but look me up. I went there, sure as fuck did. Elliott Hall, baby. And you got to be very, I'm going to give y'all a warning. Be very careful about quote unquote black people who got these Ivy League degrees. Uh huh. Because Ivy League usually spells sellout. What the fuck
Mm-hmm.
that spells.
Mm-hmm.
I know him.
Was Jackson done speaking? I wanted to let Jackson finish if he wasn't finished because I don't think he got it.
Oh, my bad if I talked
Oh,
over
that's
you,
okay.
Jackson. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Jackson.
Oh, thank you, sister. No, I had finished. I just wanted to add a second point to build on that. Uh, Mamie Till, Professor was talking about Mrs. Till, Emmett's mother. Mamie Till toured the country. The biggest, I asked that because Emmett Till's murder kicked off a lot of the civil rights, the subsequent civil rights things. People kind of use that as an example. It was like the George Floyd of the time, right? People use that case to say, see what happened here? Now we're going to push for legislation. Now we're going to do this. Mamie Till toured the country, Professor, and it was the greatest NAACP money making event ever because they used it as a campaign. So she had an agenda saying, look at what they did to my baby. NAACP rushed in, just like when Jaheim McMillan got shot in Gulfport, Mississippi. A healer was called who called me to get a real solution. But then Al Sharpton and Ben Crump were called, and I was told, Jackson, take your hand off. They don't want the boy alive. They want money. They arrested his mama as soon as Jaheim McMillan was walking out. Y'all reported on this. The family reported on this. He was walking out of Family Dollars with his hands up in slow motion, but somebody said two niggas got guns. Them niggas got guns. And they called the police, and the police shot him in the head. This just happened. We reported the news as Black media. Jaheim McMillan just got shot, what, 2 years ago? Coming out of Family Dollar in slow motion. So they like to use these Mississippi stories and then come down to Mississippi and say Black Power, and ain't nobody on that kind of stuff. And what that Kwame Ture guy? What is his name? Who came down there with the Black Power stuff? And the Indians weren't for that in Mississippi. I was just having a space about how people totally act like Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, East Texas, and Georgia was a part of what was going on in the rest of the country. People have to look at our documents. People cannot ignore not only our family stories, but our actual genealogy. It uproots all the McGraw Hill that we've been taught from sponsored by the fucking Rockefeller and Thomas Mann. They sponsored. So all whites, everybody who's not us and who hasn't dug up their genealogy and is telling the history from the perspective of the genealogy, you're not talking about nothing. You're not talking about nothing. If you're painting Africans, Americans, Indians with broad strokes and getting on the internet talking about shit you don't know that. You have to read. I was just griping about Christians want to talk to us about the Bible, but they don't know Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic. They haven't read the Book of Jubilees, the Book of Jasher, the Book of Enoch, the Book of Ezra. You
Preach.
don't care about the Word of God because you want to read all of those books that the King James Version tells your black ass to read. So you can't come to a high priest and say anything you don't know. You don't know, so you can't say.
And a dumbass pastor talking about God like one singular God when the Holy Bible says, "Let us make man in our image." What us mean?
A bunch of bulls, probably.
Well, it's a bunch of L's, like you said, L. That's a suffix. That means I forgot what that means, but Elohim, like the wing ones. That's the
Let's look
Anunnaki,
up
my
L
friend.
real quick. And that's
Come on
L
with it.
again. Elohim. Oh, okay. Bull
Elohim,
L
yeah.
turned into bow. That's why
Ooh.
they can't spell it very well. It's got all kinds of spellings because it's really bull. Just simplify things. Bull. See how easy it is? Everything's a bull.
Smoke
My
screen,
life is
huh?
very easy now.
Everything's simple. They make it complicated. You know, it's very one of the most basic classes on the planet is physics. It applies to everything. Everything's physics. Everything. Driving is physics. Basketball is physics. Doing push-ups is physics. But they make it hard because they don't want you to know it. You know, that's the system. And like Jackson said, that goes back to the Rockefellers. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1920, the Rockefeller Foundation co-opted education, schools of education, and schools of medicine. and they changed all the books to reflect different knowledge. So it's been kind of like my goal, some of y'all know, to go find old books as you learn things. Before 1920s, it was a whole nother section on elements. There was an element class called ether. Like, why don't we know this? What was a Rockefeller trying to hide? And who does Rockefeller, what's that really about? Let me be quiet for I end up disappearing. Jackson, you had something else to say? Then we'll go to 7-4.
No, I'm so glad you brought that up. Uh, the Elohim. It's all about hidden information, right? Because when we talk about the Anunnaki, who is that? When we go about when we continue to read, even if you don't want to go back to the Popol Vuh, which is the foundation of a lot of the Bible, believe it or not, right? When we do uh, comparative reading, so we expose that. But when we talk about, I like looking at it from the traditional Abrahamic religions perspective. When we look at the Bible, you have the Elohim, then you have the seraphim, then you have the cherubim, you have the Rephaim, you have the Goyim. These are bloodlines. This is why King James took that out of the Bible. He wants you to think that angels are ethereal spirits and not bloodlines of people. So the example I like to give comes from the first page of the Bible, Professor. It's which you can compare, or anybody, because I know you already know. Anybody can compare to the first page of the Targum Torah, and you understand some of these L's. So you don't have the confusion of who the snake is and who the us is. The us is the Elohim. You get that understanding, which you understand as a group of people. You get that understanding by reading the Hebrew. That's Jesus was a Hebrew. Why would you not want to read the Hebrew? That's how you know who the Elohim is. You understand that the God Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament, is a liar, and that Samael, who's the actual name of this Nahash, not snake, but serpent, that the Hebrew talks about. The serpent says, Eve, you're not going to die if you eat the fruit. Yahweh knows that you're going to uh, his eyes are going to be open. You're going to know good from evil, like them. But no, your God was lying. And who was right? Was the serpent or the God of the Bible that told people to burn down 39 towns right? No, the serpent was right. So who was the serpent? Samael. You get that from the Hebrew. The Bible says, and Eve beheld Samael, the angel of death, angel of the Lord.
But the Lord was Baal, right, Wani?
Oh my goodness. Bull.
Yahweh was the Lord. You have all the El, Samael, Michael,
Baby bull.
Gabriel, Uriel. This is a bloodline of people. You have Gabriel doing the Annunciation, and then Mary gets pregnant. I thought God was the father. I thought God she was miraculously pregnant. No, you had a nigger go in her tent. But if you think it was a spirit announcing a pregnancy and not a nigga, not a big black bull, as Wani is saying, if you don't know that this
Bull.
was a bull, a young bull?
A nigga went in her tent.
Yeah.
It's a mess, man. You should check out the
Uh-oh,
check
Seven's
out
hand
the.
is up. He doesn't like it when we get metaphysical.
Oh, come on, 7.
Come on and get us. Come on
All
and beat
right,
us
all
up.
right. No, I don't do that.
Yes, you
But
do.
you would. Okay, all right, just this once. Yeah, Professor, you were talking about this ether. They tried to find it, man. It doesn't exist. They had the Michelson Morley experiments where they were looking for I hope I can pronounce this right. Lumiferous
Oh
ether.
my goodness.
They they were trying to find it. Yeah,
What
that
is
ether
this? You
nonsense.
mean another dimension or something?
Another
No,
element.
Oh.
ether. This is this nonsense
Oh,
that
another
goes back to
element.
Aristotle.
Is
Yeah,
this
they were
for
trying to.
alchemy or something?
No,
It's
ether.
a
They thought was
pre-Einstein
this.
concept of light. That's what it is.
Oh,
Yeah, they thought that light. It since light does not need a medium to transfer. They thought it must be this thing called the ether, the
oh
lumiferous
yeah.
ether. And they did some so Michelson and Morley, they did some interferometry experiments where they measured the speed of light, and they thought that as the planet went parallel with the parallel in orbit, that the speed of light would be normal, but what they thought when they would measure the speed of light perpendicular to the orbit, that it would slow down because the light would take more time to travel. But no matter how they measured it, perpendicular or parallel, the light never slowed down. What they so yeah, so it didn't. So there was no ether. What they eventually found out was that there was contraction, length contraction, and that's what Einstein would eventually build up on.
Okay. Got it.
This outside my pay grade, man. You lost me.
I need to get some more degrees in whatever he's talking about. Uh,
Yeah, I taught physics for a minute, but I don't go that far.
Today I ran across something that I thought was interesting. This is about Islam. Now check this out. You know the Mecca, right? It's built around this apparently some meteorite, a black stone dropped over there a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah, and if you look at the Mecca, you look at the black stone. Yeah, exactly, and that's a crater.
They built a building around this stone. I mean, they built a building to, house it. Um,
Right,
and that's called the Kaaba.
right.
Caaba, in case anyone wants to look up. It's a sacred structure. So, but before Islam, they had this deity in there called Hubal. Bow. Okay, whatever.
Again.
Always that bull. I don't know what the
Wow.
deal is. Don't even ask me why, but I'm just telling you. I don't know if this is a bull though. But anyway, this deity is called Hubal, and it had 7 arrows to make decisions, right? It had a broken right hand that they replaced with gold, and they had that propped in this Kaaba, and they were worshiping it. That's what they worshiped. They worshiped a collection of deities that are probably bulls. And so one day that Hubal said that, I have to get a blood sacrifice. So um, the leader of the main tribe, the powerful tribe over there at the time, called Quraysh, Quraysh. The leader of that clan went in there and said, "Okay, what's the deal? What do I have to sacrifice?" And he said, "Your son." And he said, "No." So he refused it and said he would do some other sacrifice. Um, his son is the future father of the Prophet Muhammad. So later, years later, the Prophet went over there and said, "Hey, check out this Islamic stuff. Get away from that deity." And he wanted to cleanse the Kaaba. He said, "We got to get this evil deity out of here." And but they were like, this is the boy right here. So he had to retreat, get more of a following, which we know that he did ultimately get billions of people. He retreated and came back again and said, "No, this is the word, and we need to cleanse the Kaaba and worship this one God." So this whole world had this pantheon of God thing going with the multiple gods. And then they said, this new wave came and said, "No, we just want one God." But the trick is that even though Christians are worshiping a bunch of bulls, but think they're not. And you think you can break off from the Canaanites and say, "No, Yahweh's the real one." No, it's still a bull. You can't break off from a group and then become not a bull when it's a bull. And you can't become a new race of people when you're still from the Canaanites and you still have that ethnicity. So just run yourself through Europe and come over here and go all these places so you won't be those Canaanites. But the real, I just thought that that's like a wave of people. But the real thing is that people refuse to worship one thing. They won't do it. That is why they keep talking about different angels, different angels. Oh, Gabriel is this and that, and they're gonna talk. They're still doing it. Not only are they worshiping bulls, but and don't know they are, but now they're still uh worshiping multiple gods because now they're venerating angels. They're still, and of course, there's massive human worship. They worship queens, and that's because they said that they were God's representatives on earth. So they have that in the back of their mind. And then if they're not doing that, they're worshiping athletes, celebrities, pretty people, or anything else. So that's just something that it looks like humans are geared to do this. They don't just focus on one thing.
We're built to worship. Well, that Wani, I was trying my best not to go down this road, but I'm gonna have to do it now.
What?
So, if y'all look at the um, Epic of Gilgamesh and the Indian Vedas and the Maharata, I think I'm saying that right. But the ancient text, there's an ancient text. Let's look at the Vedas in India that talks of a galactic battle that had mentioned starships and explosions. Okay, a bunch of mumbo jumbo. Nah, because if you go, I forget the name of the places in Pakistan. There's a whole area out here in 2024 full of dead bodies that's been vitrified that have radioactivity in them. They've been preserved. Animals hadn't eaten them because they're radioactive. Why the fuck are their dead bodies hanging out in an area that looks like a nuclear weapon went off? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I was reading. Um, there was a guy. What was the guy's name? Wani, the psychic,
Edgar Casey?
Edgar Casey. So there was a psychic who is a world renowned psychic out of Kentucky. Never went to never finished school. This that would like was predicting things, finding out stuff he just wasn't supposed to know. He got world renowned attention, and Sigmund Freud showed up to his house and put him on the couch. I think Sigmund knew what he was looking for, Wani. Because Sigmund and Carl Jung, they it's so much to say. The Germans during World War One, although the Germans lost, what nobody's telling you guys is Europeans. World War One was like a raid of Africa, and England and Germany, they found some shit that they ain't talking about in Egypt. They found some technology. That's where that technology boom came from. But I digress. My point is, um, Sigmund Freud somehow knew what questions to ask this guy. This Edward Casey would go into a trance like state. They called him the sleeping prophet because he would go to sleep, and in a trance like state, you could ask him any question. He would be collected. He was connected directly to what Carl Jung calls a collective unconscious, the universe, the all, God, right? Infinity. And so when he went to collective unconscious in this trance like state, not Carl Jung, Sigmund Freud asked him about Atlantis. Oh shit. And in vivid detail, Casey said the world used to be basically one landmass, Pangea. He didn't say that, I'm saying Pangea. And he said it was three dominant landmasses, kingdoms. The most sophisticated one was called Atlantis. He said there was also Lemuria. And the reason why I say that Sigmund Freud got that information from Egypt is because the German, the dead white guys, what we call them in psychology, is they knew about this shit. How the fuck do you know? How the fuck did Rudolf Steiner know about Atlantis and Lemuria? They found some documents in Egypt, but I digress. But anyway, Sigmund asked him about Atlantis. The dude was like, there's a landmass, very sophisticated. The way he described it looked like Star Wars, ships flying around. cities floating, just shit way more advanced than we are now. And he said the other landmass was in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, gigantic, called Mu or Lemuria. Mu is short for Lemuria. So to give you an idea how big Lemuria is, the northern tip of Lemuria was Hawaii. The southeastern tip of Lemuria was Easter Island. It was gigantic. Um, and Casey said the Atlanteans got visited by the sons of Belial. There goes Baal again. So the Atlanteans were visited by a group who identified themselves as the sons of Belial. And whatever the sons of Belial told the Atlanteans, they corrupted the Atlanteans' minds. And Atlantis start taking over the world in a ferocious, vicious way. Casey said before the sons of Belial showed up to Atlantis, the world was peaceful and perfect harmony for hundreds of thousands of years. I don't know if it was a virus or whatever the sons of Belial had, but according to Casey, the Atlanteans start taking over the world. Lemuria, the other sophisticated continent, equally as sophisticated, but Lemuria, according to Casey, didn't really focus on weapons. They cared about healing and, whereas Atlantis had sophisticated weaponry.
Interesting.
Basically, Casey, this shit's wild. Wild one.
Now, let me ask you
Go
a
ahead.
quick question. The reason I said all that stuff about the Kaaba was, do you think that that deity, Hubal or Hubble, knew that the prophet would come and challenge his authority in the future, so he wanted to kill off his father, or do you think it was just a coincidence?
The deity knew that he would come.
Trying
That's
to
a good
kill off his
question.
his potential father because he could see that that boy would come to town and say, "Hey, have you heard about, Islam?"
I didn't even think of it that way. That's a
That's
good.
what
That's
crossed my
interesting.
mind. But um, ultimately, when you start talking about Islam, they're saying that, their position is whatever, um, you know, they agree with the whole Yahweh thing. So it's like it says Allah and Yahweh are one. They're saying that's the same thing. So they're still worshiping bulls.
Interesting. Well, Doctor Walter Williams has a different take on it. He says it all originated from Kemet, the Memphite theology, the 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 story of Asar Set Heru, mother father, the virgin birth. That story. He basically says when Alexander the Greek, the Great, for sake of saying, took over Egypt. At his demise, his successor, Ptolemy One Lagi, wanted to be called a savior. He was very insecure. And basically, Ptolemy One Lagi perverted the Memphite theology, the story of the mother, father, father, son, Holy Ghost. It was no Holy Ghost; it was Holy Mother. But and Ptolemy One Lagi perverted it so he could be called the savior. But long story short, without getting a long diatribe, Wani, Dr. Walt Williams says that when the whites were trying to sell the Egyptians their own shit back and saying that God is white instead of jet black, Dr. Williams says that the the Egyptian priests, the religious class, got split because they were trying to they were saying that, hey, we have God. He has a, what was it, diphacetic, monophysitic. He has a human nature and a godlike spirit. And he said Dr. Walter Williams said Egypt got split because half the priests didn't believe it. Half the priests said no, 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 God is just spirit. He's all spirit. And the other half said no, God is all 100% man, 100% spirit. You've heard that before in church. He's 100% God and 100% man. But anyway, and Dr. Walt Williams said the group that split, Monophysitic, diphysitic. The monophysitics, the ones that said, God is just spirit. That's all he is. Split from the diphysitics, the people who the diphysitics later became Christians because they said God, Jesus is. It never was
How is
Jesus.
that legitimate when people just split and then just change something to what they want it to be?
It's
Just
totally. It's
it's not
totally.
legitimate
It's,
because, like the women that are Christian here are supposed to be covered up just like the in the burqa. But they just decide they don't want to do that. How is that legitimate? They decide they don't want to slaughter animals and children. How is that legitimate? You're supposed to do a sacrifice to these bulls. You're not following the book. That's why I don't have any respect. Follow the book.
look up just this shit. If this is a rabbit hole that has me burning in my lectures because I want to tell, but I would end up so sued if I brought this up in a lecture hall. But you're violating my. Well, anyway, check this shit out. Like it's all a stolen legacy, but Justinian. So shit, it's so much I don't even know where to begin. So there's a church, Hagia. So Constantinople. That shit was called the Hagia Sophia, and there's a church at Hagia Sophia. Her church of that means holy. Dang it, what does Hagia Sophia mean? It's holy something. Church of the holy.
Churchdom,
Uh,
Church of Wisdom.
Holy wisdom. That's it. There you go. There you go. So the Hagia Sophia basically was built by the Egyptians. Look, I'm just gonna fucking say it. I'm not in no lecture hall. Christianity is a modified version of the Memphite theology, but it got perverted. In true Christian, and I believe the true forms of and it's not Christ. There ain't no such thing as Christ. It's the Charist, Karast. Charist means the bringer of gifts, and these motherfuckers know it. I passed by Episcopalian church in a white neighborhood, and it said Church of the Eucharist. I was like, you know what's going on. It's the bringer of gifts, and the story is about the true story is actually beautiful. I think I've had kind of an experience with this divinity. It means that there is one creator. There is one. Yes. And the Holy Spirit or Aset, the mater, that comes from the word matter. It's mother nature. Like the world, like we're surrounded, matter is mother. So we're a combination of God the Father, the spirit of nature, mater. And guess who you are? Everybody in here is Eucharist. Every last one of us has the potential to be the Charis, the bringer of gifts. It's all about what work you do. The white man said this shit is like some white man God off that you got to go somewhere and find somewhere. God is looking for somebody when we need to be looking for ourselves. This shit's ridiculous. But the Hagia Sophia, back to what Wani was saying about illegitimacy. Y'all want to hear about some motherfucking illegitimacy? Take this. Um, when Constantine, um, where do I even start? When Justinian one got the Hagia Sophia and stole it from the Egyptians. They were worshiping Asaru. By then, they morphed um, the religion into Mary, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, right? Moved it around. So they turned the Hagia Sophia into a great church for Christianity. And when Justinian lost the church was taken over by the motherfucking the Islamics. Now the Hagia Sophia is Islam. Like I think we need to go back to the source, man. It's not hidden. According to Dr. Williams, Roman Emperor Justinian I was the builder of the world's first Christian church, the Hagia Sophia. He became the world's first Roman Catholic Byzantine European Pope with complete ecclesiastic authority over the Council of Constantinople. Wani, did you hear that? That's why your Catholic preachers be worshiping a black Mary, because they worshiping the real thing. They got us running at a white Mary that's never existed. They got us running outside of power. and they running right into power, falling on their knees to a jet black asset. Hopefully, I didn't piss anybody off, but it's true. Step War, come
You
on.
know, there is
Yeah.
Libyan
Uh,
desert glass all
okay.
across the north part of Africa.
There's what?
Libyan desert glass is evidence of a nuclear bomb.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think the story of Atlantis is real. I think it's real. Everything confirms it. Lemuria. So basically, where I left off is when Edward Casey was in trance and Sigmund Freud was asking him questions about Atlantis. Number one, how Sigmund Freud knew to ask him that. But when Sigmund Freud was asking him what happened to Atlantis, he said that when the Atlanteans started viciously taking over the world and indoctrinating the world, Atlantis and Lemuria had a nuclear war. And this thing we call the Young Adrias, the whole ice age, where everybody in here has been taught a comet hit Earth and knocked her off her axis and created an ice age. Edward Casey said that war between Atlantis and Lemuria fucked the planet. It was so much destruction that Mother Earth couldn't handle it. And basically, went into hibernation, went into an ice age. But the reason why that story is becoming very fascinating to me, and I told Wani this the other night, is the Lemurians, according to legend, Edward Casey said the Lemurians they started to feel that there was an impending war. They felt it. They were like, "Oh God, we about to have a nuclear war," or whatever type of weapons they were using. And a large group of Lemurians ran to what is now California and took refuge in a mountain called Mount Shasta. I've been seeing pictures of Mount Shasta since I was a child and not knowing I was looking at something weird is going on in Mount Shasta, y'all. Anyway, I'm weirding people
There's
out.
always weird stuff at Mount Shasta. It was weird when we were doing stuff on Mount Shasta.
Who is we?
The indigenous people, like we have a whole mythology about our relationship to Mount Shasta and why we would take refuge in there and when it's gonna blow. I've written about when it's gonna blow.
Wow, that's interesting. Y'all done got quiet on me. Wani, I'm looking for
Yeah.
one more
I
thing.
got something.
Go ahead.
You know that Hagia Sophia building? You know the way they designed that building thousands of years ago. That building is earthquake proof. It would
Yep.
take off the Richter scale earthquake to bring it down. Those people were smart. That they the way they built it, the way they have it, yeah. And you talking about cattle worship and everything. I just wonder, where do the Hindus fit into all of this?
What they fit into the Vedic system, the Hindus, what you mean, where's the religion fit?
Yeah, I mean, because their religion is centered around cattle worship the and I'm not going into the practices, but they can get disgusting.
I don't know much about Hinduism. I know about the Vedas, the Vedic system, which is basically talking about Atlantis and Lemuria. That's what they were talking about. I guess that is Hinduism, isn't it, Wani? I don't know much about it.
You know, all this kind of remind me of Scientology and their little myth of how they aliens trapped in bodies and you gotta uh I forgot how I go. You gotta say all your darkest secrets, and you get some type of uh ether energy. It's crazy, but that's what I all this kind of brought to my mind was how Scientology say they was running from a war and came here.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. I don't know much about
Yeah,
Scientology.
this I think this what Aleister Crowley started with German lady after he was working under the German lady. But have you read this book called When Rocks Cry Out? It
No, I hadn't heard of it.
it kind of touch on that too, in saying that the people of Mu had came to America, and though those was basically like the descendants of Solomon in the Bible, like the son that him and Queen Sheba had, the little secret son that they had, and
Yeah.
when he ran away, he Post had ran to America, and started the Olmec and the Mayan culture.
It's interesting, bro, and it sounds kooky and like woo woo, but I'm gonna challenge y'all. Go ahead and look up. Let me find out his name. Duh. There's a guy in the '90s. He's a retired Army lieutenant colonel. His name. He got a real regular name. It escapes my mind. Um, I'm looking for it right now. It's a very simple name, just like John Smith or some shit. But anyway, while I'm looking for his name, he got a bunch of books that talked about hidden treasure and shit in the Americas and blah blah blah. And he had a little skill in the army, so he went to this place in Illinois and he found a fucking cave that had my dude found a cave that had Egyptian gold, like millions of dollars of Egyptian gold, but Egyptian artifacts, and the military like blocked it off. What those of you who don't know me, this is named Burroughs. So if you want to, y'all go ahead and look up Burroughs Cave, Burrows cave. I mean, hieroglyphics all over the fucking place in Illinois, right? And the government went over a massive cover up. Um, Coins, but some of the coins and some of the artifacts escaped, and there you can find them. So it's definitely evidence. There are pictures all over the place, evidence that this is real. Um,
You talking about Henry Hubbard?
Before Russell Burroughs,
I thought you were talking about
look
J.E.
up.
Kincaid.
No. I was gonna talk about that in a minute. That's the Grand Canyon. Look up, hey yo, look up Russell Burroughs. It's Burrows. Burroughs Cave. Look that shit up. Eat your heart out. But yeah, that's a whole nother one. I used to work at Smithsonian when I lived in DC years ago. I worked at Smithsonian, and that's gonna be a space all in itself talking about that shit. But what I did see before I resigned from Smithsonian is they got a holding area for artifacts that nobody gets to see. It's kind of like storage. And I was like, so Smithsonian is downtown. It's in DC. Tell me why they storage area is on Andrews Air Force Base. What do they want somebody not to see? Well, it used to be Andrews Air Force. It's Andrews Joint Base now. What they don't? Why the fuck you got a storage base on Andrews? You know, Andrews is like the most secure, one of the most secure Air Force bases in the world.
That's like the Vatican. Their stuff is the Vatican level of security.
I tell you what it is. If y'all ever seen um, Raiders of the Lost Ark, you remember a really good Indiana Jones one where they found the Ark. If y'all remember, those of you old enough to remember, at the very end, the military came and got the Ark and put it in an unmarked box that said U.S. government or some shit on it. Do not open. And they took it in a room that was gigantic that had a whole bunch of boxes that said U.S. government do not open. And they put it on a shelf, and U.S. start to burn off of it. But I was saying all that to say I've seen that room before. I worked at the Smithsonian almost a year, and I've seen so much shit. I'm gonna have to get a notebook and have a space on it. The Smithsonian never closes, y'all. The Smithsonian has its own police. Then they got MP5s like fucking submachine guns. Um, and it never closes. It stays 24 hours. It closes to the public. But I worked at Smithsonian during a George W. I don't want to say HW. W. Bush W's administration. And W be coming up in the museum having parties and shit. Like they throw parties for dignitaries, world class shit, with Swedish war colonels, and they walk through looking at exhibits wasted at 2 o'clock in the morning. But I use my little ID. They call it a magic ID to get inside the Museum of Natural History because I kind of grew up in DC. My grandmama was from DC. I spent my summers up there. And I would always go. Every child loves the Museum of Natural History because it's the one that got the dinosaurs and the cavemen, and it got the fucking room that rains. I love that room to this day. That's a room, and it rains like every minute and a half. It turns into a thunderstorm. It's so wonderful. Well, I always, since a little boy, wanted to see the Hope Diamond, but I was never really tall enough, and it always would be packed full of white people talking about ooh, ooh. So I said, when I got hired, I said, man, you just wait till this motherfucker close. I'm gonna go look at that Hope Diamond. And I did. I went up in that bitch at 9 p.m. Closed. Take that. Right next to the Hope Diamond was a Smithsonian Special Police with an MP5 fully automatic on the side. And an old black man curator. That's been the story of my life in DC. Like when I go to the museums by myself, an old black man would come find me and start telling me stuff. Um, Neely Fuller used to be one of them old black men. Hey, did you know that this happened? Well, I'm looking at the Hope Diamond. I had it all to myself, man. And I kept looking around like, holy shit. It kind of looked, the diamond looked like it was going, zhoo, zhoo. It was pulsing like a heartbeat. No shit.
It's
And I start,
hers. It's
huh?
hers. You shouldn't have gone so close to it.
I don't think anything bad happened. Maybe I had a kind of fucked up year that year,
No, you
but
should be
yeah, I
fine
didn't
because you're
know.
not the owner, so you'll be okay.
I
It just
I
bump
didn't
it
know. I
bumps
was
off
20
it
something.
bumps off the owners.
Yeah, that's true. And I went and I looked at that motherfucker and it was like it was beating like and I kept looking around and the old black man, like tour guide curator was like, he started laughing. He said, "You looking for a light, ain't you?" And I said, "Yes, sir. How you know?" He said, "You looking for a light that you not gonna find." I said, "Sir." He said, "Ain't no light." I said, "It's coming from inside. It's shooting up." He said, "No." He said, "Ain't no light touching that thing." He said, "That thing is glowing by itself." And then he said, "Check this shit out." he was like, he was like, the English royalty stole that shit. An English prince stole that shit out the head of a deity. We don't know where. We think it was either in India or in Africa. And he said the moment he stole it, he got sick and died. And they gave it to the next in line of the English royalty. She got sick and died. And they gave it to another princess, and she started to get sick and said, "Oh hell no, I don't want this shit." So the English. This is when I realized that there's a connection between the English, those Rothschilds and the Rockefeller, because he said the English royalty sold it to the Carnegies, either the Carnegies or Rockefellers. I can't remember. It's one of those families. They sold it on the cheap to that family. I want to say whichever one was in Pennsylvania. Maybe it was the Carnegies. But they sold it to that family. The family paid like a couple million or something, thinking they got it still. The moment they got it, somebody died. They got it. And then they gave it to the niece. She came down sick, and they got the message real fast and was like, "We don't want this
Did
shit."
anybody die
So
that didn't physically own it? Do you remember?
I don't know what no I don't know, and I want to know what happened to that niece that came sick and that English royalty who got sick. I don't know if they later died, but I know a couple of them was mentioned that have come down bad
Yeah,
cancer.
that diamond is
But
jacked up. I mean, there's you can, say I don't believe in that if you want to, but guess what? Nobody's going to own it. It's going to sit right there because nobody is going to own that thing because too many people died. There's enough is enough.
Well, you can easily kind of like chalk it off to woo woo. Like, well, maybe that diamond has some type of radioactive isotope. We don't know, right? Well, the crazy shit is the Carnegie. I want to say Carnegie family. The Carnegie family didn't sell it. They donated it as a tax write off to the Smithsonian Institution, and they left that shit on the front porch in an unmarked box to be picked up and taken directly to the Museum of Natural History. A black postman came and got that motherfucker that didn't know he had no clue what he was going to get. His orders was to get the box and ride on the train with it until ride on train with it. Drop it off at the museum, and then his duties. He wrote the train ride like from Pennsylvania to DC. It's like an hour. Drop it off and then ride back to Philly. My man dropped that motherfucker off at the museum, rode back to Philly, got in his car and got in a car wreck, killed himself. So like,
It thought he was the
don't y'all?
owner? Okay, let's get this straight. They said they were donating it, right?
Yeah,
So maybe it treated him like the owner.
he did have power over it. He owned it. Essentially, it was his property, right? Not legally, but spirits don't give a fuck about law.
Oh, I
You
thought
know,
they
a
did
spirit.
because they're
Yeah,
some
I
of
thought
these
they did.
things you have to get a lawyer to do these deals with these genies. It's like, wait a minute, gotta make sure all the T's are crossed because
Wani just kind of told a little secret on it. We got any attorneys in here? She just told a little secret on the practice of law. You know, Jordan. Jordan Maxwell kind of dropped the game on that. A lot of the practice of the law, from my view, that it's be getting kind of occultish. Jackson.
Brother, you mentioned the Burroughs Cave. Well, you know those. I don't know about the airport you and Wani were talking about, but I'm thinking that it could be the federal government wants to hide the burial of Alexander and Cleopatra, because you know those
They hiding
artifacts
all
speak to
they
them.
hiding all kind of shit. They had brother. We don't know what the fuck's going on. They had the Grand Canyon. Y'all can look right now in the Grand Canyon. There's a temple of Isis. There's a temple of what, Ra or some shit there. It's like it's in the middle of nowhere. Like, what the fuck? Why does that say temple of Isis? Well, anyway, anyway, one of my favorite people ever. People say I remind them of him. Not, I think it's such a flattery. But Billy Carson, that's my nigga. But Billy, that's why I'm trying to get like Billy. I'm trying to have some money like him so I don't have to go to these folk job in the morning. But Billy, there, okay, so like you were saying, God dog it, what's the guy's name? That you were said his name earlier. He explored the Grand Canyon and found caves to Egyptian
Oh,
artifacts.
G.E. Kincaid.
Kincaid, that's him. So Smithsonian really did cover that shit up. So it was a guy, a scholar named G. Kincaid was walking through the Grand Canyon one day, just lollygagging, and found a cave and went up in that motherfucker. Gold laying around, hieroglyphics, metanetta written everywhere, statues. And Kincaid said, he went to go get a team, like an expedition. He's like, gonna tell the world. He wrote articles about this shit and made a big hubbub about it. This is like I think the before the 20s, right? Like the teens. He made a big hubbub about it and got his what do you call it, his expedition party together, got some money together, and went down there and disappeared. Like they never heard from him again. Where the fuck he went? And nobody knows where, his maps and stuff disappeared to where the
All
cave
the shit
was.
was shipped to your
Okay,
office,
cool.
Professor.
Huh?
All this shit was shipped to your office
oh
What do
my
you mean?
goodness.
at the
Check your
Smithsonian.
drawers. Check your drawers.
My
Not
drawers?
those
At
drawers, the
the
other drawers.
Smithsonian, Professor.
I didn't. No, I was just a tour guide. I didn't have an office. No, I just was a little, which was perfect because nobody took me seriously, and I used to go places like, "Hey, I'm just a dumb kid, I don't know nothing," and I would sit there and soak up game. But Anyway, fast forward 100 years. Billy Carson. So it's written in the Smithsonian and it's redacted. It doesn't look. It's like you can tell bullshit. Like Smithsonian denies that it ever happened. A lot of denial. But if you look back earlier, you can find Smithsonian articles that actually say
Hmm.
something. It's just bullshit. We know bullshit. Well, Billy Carson with his millions of dollars said, "I'm gonna trick you." Got a fucking helicopter and a small expedition team and flew his helicopter in the middle of nowhere. Because when you go to the Grand Canyon, there are mysteriously signs up to say "Do not enter." Do not enter. What the fuck you talking about? This is a park.
They own
Fuck you, mean
they
don't
own
enter.
everything. Don't fish,
Exactly.
don't hunt. We own the birds in the sky. You can't just shoot birds in the sky. You can't fish without paying them, and you can't go to the park without paying them.
Wow. Well, so Billy got on a fucking helicopter like and flew to a remote area. What he thought was like middle of nowhere and start walking through the canyon with his caravan. And he said that motherfucker said he walked like a couple of yards. He didn't get like 10 yards. And he said out of nowhere, two armed guards with military M4s, body armor, and all black uniforms without a name tag said, "Hey, you can't go here." He's like, "Where did you come from?" They materialized.
Maybe they're those men in black. They just like pop up out of nowhere. Sometimes you gotta pop up and arrest people for no reason.
So word on the street, Wani, the army, the most elite unit in the military that we know of, it officially doesn't exist. It's called Delta Force. That's the slang term for it. For some reason, operators in the military call it CAG. I don't know why. I don't know. Citizens Acquisition Group. I don't know what CAG stands for, but it's affectionately known as Delta Force. The Army doesn't um, admit or deny its existence, but we do know that it exists because there are flyers that show up. That to well, CAG will. They're real special. They'll accept anybody from any branch. You know what I'm saying? They're looking for something that they're not telling what they're looking for. They're looking for a special type of person that they're not. The SEALs will tell you what they're looking for. Green Berets. You can get on the website and it says we need this. You need to do this. You need to be this. You need to be that. Delta doesn't exist, and they ain't telling you what they look for. But people who make Delta, I heard some SEALs say, met a couple of SEALs who worked with some Delta guys, and he said the one thing they had in common is they were all like outrageously smart. Like he said they were like murderous geniuses. Like they just were like they could do advanced mathematics. They could think real fast. That which is kind of not an operator. Well, it's not typical. Like dorky almost, athletic and dorky, which is an odd combination. But
That's excuse me. That's the SEALs.
no, a
Okay, yeah,
Delta.
yeah, because I knew this. I knew SEALs, and yeah, they I got stories, but yeah.
No, I'm talking about Delta. I'm talking about a SEAL telling me about a Delta guy, Delta Force. Well, which what we call Delta Force. It's called the word. The most affectionate the term is the unit. They call it unit, but it has no name. But anyway, long story short, I was told that Delta runs those operations, like because Delta doesn't have a name, you know, not officially. They got an arm tab. It's just a red knife, but the army doesn't admit to them or deny them. But I was reading somewhere that Delta allegedly does those type of operations, protecting alien spacecrafts and shit. I wouldn't doubt it. Ladies and gentlemen, I've enjoyed you. Um, we kind of strayed off topic just a little bit, but I had fun. I think we've accomplished our goal. Who started the civil rights movement? Just in case any of y'all bump into John Lake Wazamo's uninformed ass, y'all make sure you tell him that. Let me get my
He
evidence
just
up.
ignores people online. Um, if the heat gets too hot, he just disappears and then pops back out later with some more lies. His people are losers. They lost the war. They didn't build up Mexico. They never built up Mexico. They were there a couple of 100 years hanging out with those Mayan temples. And then when the white boys came, they said, yeah, we just walked up on them. We don't know who built those. They didn't build anything. They're not builders. That's what the problem is. They're living in those colonial buildings in cities that were built for them, and they've been hanging around those pyramids. Now, who did build the pyramids is the question.
Hmm. That's a good question.
They're not Mayan. They're not, they just assign names to things as well. Like they say things are Incan, and then if you ask questions, they go, well, it's pre Incan. Well, who are those guys? Oh, we don't want to talk about it.
They just be saying
Yeah,
anything,
because
man.
they have to put a period on things and they can't put a period on it. Things are pre-Inca. Okay, how come they're not building those big ass walls now? How come we took engineers over there to look at those walls, Sacsayhuaman walls in Peru, and said, "How would you build these?" I don't know. I can't build them now. Got engineers looking at these places that they have walls and point blank saying, we can't do that. We can't bring a
Right.
crane up this hill and bring all those stones over there. So,
No crane could lift those.
right.
No crane can lift that amount of weight
And
that
the
high.
people are
None.
over there eating guinea pigs and looking up in the air. They didn't do that.
Hmm.
No level of them did that. But we did find 70 skulls that were shaped like eggs that are 25% heavier than a human skull that don't have the normal lines on them that a human skull has. So maybe we should think that maybe they told people to do that or they do that.
Wani, hold on. Let me. I'm gonna keep talking. I'm gonna find one of them skulls and put them in a jumbotron.
Anyway, they looked at the skulls and they said, they tested one of them and they said, we see Scottish DNA and the rest of it is alien. What does that even mean? Scottish and alien? And I think after that, they said, just throw the whole machine away. We don't even want to test the other skulls. I think they probably looked at the skulls and found a good sample uh, to do the test on. Anyway, it came back that it has DNA that they don't understand. And the science doesn't want to admit that. They already have aliens. Remember, they found that little alien in the desert, I think it was. And they were like, this is a
Oh yeah.
total alien. And they said, oh no, this is a mutated fetus. But that many mutations? Okay, well, this they can't do that with. Now, when they find one thing, scientists can say, oh, it's just a mutation. Okay, fine, you get away with it. But 70 oblong heads that were not coned with a, because there's a way that the skull looks when you do that, versus having it actually like that. Yeah, they can't explain the 25%. You don't have 25% heavier skulls just by accident.
Yep. More mass. Yep.
They're
And then like
smarter.
the, the point you brought up was this no sutures.
No sagittal sutures on. That's impossible. You have to have that in order to be human. If you don't have your brain fusing properly together, you would never reach adulthood. People die because of things like that.
Wow.
Infants die because of development issues like that. No,
That look at that skull, y'all. That is a straight
that's an
alien. That's
alien.
all that
And
is.
that crazy looking headed woman was probably walking around the earth being a queen in some castle, bossing people around. Not a castle, but whatever they had that was exclusive and peasants couldn't come in there. She didn't have to walk amongst the people. She was just, conducting things whether she was, a good alien or a bad alien. Her head looks bad, but we don't
Now
know.
I'm about to put Beltron. I and this isn't my theory. I'm not gonna steal it, but I forgot who said, but somebody said they these people hide because they get in high positions like priests or kings or whatnot. And if you look at the doggone it, they mess with my drumtron again. Hold on. If you look at the headdress, let's look at this, the Pope's mitre. So basically, they said they use royal headdresses and stuff to hide their shape. So if you look at the shape of the skull and then you flip and look at the Pope's mitre, like that would perfectly hide that elongated head.
But like they say that around 1400 CE, that this Viracocha deity came into their they started worshiping this Viracocha. I'm sure you heard of it. Said he was from the Lake Titicaca. He rose out
Oh
of
yeah,
Lake
yeah, Viracocha,
Viracocha.
Viracocha.
He
Yes.
rose out of Lake Titicaca, and all of a sudden they start building all these massive buildings. And in fact, when
Wow.
you look at the date that this deity started being um, venerated, elevated, and worshipped, you do see that these pyramids start being built. I haven't had time to go through all of them to see which deities might have inspired them to build, but that's pretty interesting because they weren't doing that before. They had little thatch roof shacks. And then all of a sudden now they have these big stone temples and you can't tell where the stones are coming from. Some of these places they don't even have a, a place where the stones are coming from. Or the stones like that
Right.
are like 200 miles away or the closest are, so it's not even logistically possible to build it. So that's some of these issues are really something.
I saw some shit the other day talking about the Great Pyramids of Giza, arguing that they were a power plant. It was one of the craziest and coolest things I've ever seen, Wani. It showed that the Great Pyramid of Giza, like a large portion of it is made out of quartz. And for those of you who don't know, quartz generates electricity. And I'll prove it to you. If y'all ever had those little one of those lighters that you use to start a barbecue fire, you know that little clicker, you click it and like a little bolt of electricity shoots out. That's quartz. Quartz does that. Well, long story short, this show was showing the different, they call it the Queen's Chamber and the King's Chamber, because Europeans said some bullshit like people were buried there. But nobody's buried in the Great Tomb of Giza, like the Great Pyramid of Giza. Basically, the Queen's Chamber is a shaft that goes down at a certain angle and a certain size, and the King's Chamber is a shaft that goes down at a whole nother angle, a different side, and they're both like grounded in the ground, and groundwater kind of flows under them. And this engineer was saying, if you could pour, if somebody could pour like hydrochloric acid in one of those shafts, and somebody else would pour like sulfuric acid or an equivalent in the other shaft, that place would be a massive
That's
like
what they
battery.
did over at the other one. Remember I was telling you at the in the one in Mexico, they found those mercury and hydrochloric acid. That's why I was saying, what does that make? Because
Oh
I'm
wow. I didn't
that they have the residue from it. So I don't know what they're trying to do.
it's
They
electric.
said all those
The
obelisks are just they're all made of crystal, high crystal content. They think they were using those to communicate. So I know it's very hard to believe um that they would be technologically advanced, but I believe that I mean the earth is billions of years old and I don't think it started with people coming out of a cave and to where we are now.
Nah, it was more
There's other
advanced.
things going on prior to that with other types of people.
The Atlanteans and Lemurians. And Wani, I'm sorry to say it, but I think we're Atlantean.
No, I'm just a regular old American girl.
Why do you want to be
I
regular? They
think
give
Americans are.
Professor.
I'm just regular.
I think we're the descendants of the Atlanteans because Mu is in Polynesia. So I'm thinking the Lemurians would kind of look like Asian or Hawaiian. They would have that look.
Polynesia?
There you go.
You said Mu is in the Polynesian area.
I didn't send. Hold on, I thought I put it in the jumbotron. Yeah, if you look in the jumbotron, look at the legend of the land of Mu,
And what
Lemuria.
age range is that location? Do you know? Or are they
The
saying we're
alleged.
just allegedly right now?
They're saying pre Young Adrias, 12,000 years.
That would still be the Negritos.
Oh, okay. Well,
The
never mind.
Negritos, the Negritos have been in Southeast Asia for 30,000 years, and the Aboriginals were down in that area. They've been in the Southeast Asian, going toward Australia, going toward the Pacific Islands for 70, 80,000 years.
Wow.
So it's interesting.
That's interesting. I didn't piece that together when you were talking about the other pyramid but on the Great Pyramid of Giza they found that too. They found residue
Oh my
of what they
goodness.
of what they think is sulfuric acid, and they found residue of what they think
Oh
is
my goodness. Go ahead,
yeah,
Jackson.
it was
That
a
is crazy. They found it in two of them?
yep, they're batteries.
Lord.
And the crazy shit is the the outer casing of the Great Pyramid of Giza used to be like quartz. It was white. And the very top, which was stolen, was the little the capstone was pure gold. And they said when it was up and running, it would have generated electricity in the air. Just basically like we
Like
get Wi-Fi.
Tesla was trying to do.
Yep, Tesla did it. Sure did.
Go ahead, Jackson.
Hey, family, y'all know that we just had Ancestors Day over here on the 3rd and 4th. We visit the pyramids here in America. Since there's more here in ours, we can actually use the power that's in there for all kind of stuff. We put our quartz in there because there's already quartz buried with some of the elders that are preserved. Um, Ours are hydroelectric. Most of the pyramids are hydroelectric, and so sometimes under them you can still see, or they're by a river, so you know where the water source is uh, for the power source. Now, I've told people about the rituals that we do on the mounds, because now they just look like lumps of. Hold on, the pastor's on the phone now. Hold on. So last year, I've talked about the rituals that we do as Americans that we've been documented doing on these mounds, right? Because now they just look like lumps of dirt because all of the masonry has been taken off. And we just performed another one for Ancestors Day. The mounds are still astrologically aligned, right? And the hydroelectric power is still active, but nobody's using them because all of the treaties took us off of that infrastructure and demanded that we get off of that land. So now we're living in Louisiana off of those mounds, and we're being flooded. We're being flooded in Mississippi. We're being flooded in the Carolinas, and it's all because we're building houses and still following like European culture and not following the culture that we built our communities on and all kind of stuff. Um, Wani was talking. Oh, I put into the jumbotron one of the posts about the bulls. I put in some of the heads,
Yes, thank you. I saw that.
and then Alabama.
What is
Alabama.
that?
When we read about the legend of Mu, it's an American story, and people who read
Okay.
our American stories, they get the legend of Alabama and Atlantis, according to what we said before, like Plato started to write about it. Just wanted to add that too. But the map up top is
Okay.
Alabama.
We're gonna figure this bull thing out. This is a mystery because I took the bull all the way back to the Khoisan, so there's no other older people on the earth that I can figure out why they're dealing with bulls. That's the end of the line. Nobody's older than the Khoisan.
Who's
This
not
is
older
true.
than
I
the
don't get it.
Khoisan? Wani.
Mhm.
Who's not older than the Khoisan?
There's no populations living on the earth that are not older. I mean, I think they're tied with pygmies.
You mean the pygmies that come out of Tennessee,
No, no, no,
or the
no.
Gentile
Over
pygmies?
in the Congo.
Well, Albert Perry out of what is he out of the Carolinas? Albert Perry has the oldest genetics. Not a,
How old is it?
I don't know. It's been documented as the oldest though. I can look it up. Hold on.
We always have to say that we know of because you never know when they are going to find something and say, this is the oldest group and this is the oldest group. But I bet you they're going to have a bull in there. If they find a cave, I bet you it's going to be, and I'm still trying to find out why. What's the deal? And yes, the bison and the buffalo are still bovine worshiping.
Interesting. What did you say about Alabama and Atlantis?
Oh, the story of Mu comes out of our stories. So part of the scholarship, because Mal Walker has been talking about it, but he'll post the book, and so we have the PDF to that. But I hadn't found any scholarship outside of that book except for the map. So the map that I was posting has Alabama on it, and it's just like a small receipt to support that book. Because sometimes we have to have a little bit of extra scholarship to help people be excited to read or be interested to read, kind of like lends a little bit more gravity to the scholarship we're presenting.
I got obsessed with Mount Shasta today at work and just start digging through files and found out that they allegedly that well no not allegedly they found skeletons at the base of Mount Shasta that were 10 feet tall.
Look, that place is a total zoo. Just go over there. You're going to see something. If you want to see supernatural thing, you don't have to go to a haunted house. I would just hang out over there for about 10 days. Because they say you can see things pretty easily. A Native American man over there said that he saw the top of the mountain lift off and a spaceship go inside. And he said, after I saw that, I just said, okie dokie, I'm not even going to question anymore. This, uh, this couple was fishing and they saw a Bigfoot. And then the son was like, oh my God, let's go follow it. And the father said, no, 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 no. Just, they live over there. Leave them alone. And he was like, "What? You can't you can't just randomly say that and just keep fishing." So, yeah, they have things going on over there. I didn't see it. I can't swear to it in court, but I think that that is probably the most active place, unless you want to go to Skinwalker Ranch and get skinned. That place is too hot to handle. You will definitely go in a vortex over there. They said why the what did they say? The Hopi got mad at the other tribe for allowing them to get railroaded by the United States government. And they put uh, a curse on the land, And oh boy, did that work.
Hey, Wani.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I guess for you and Professor, I listen. I looked at not Joe Rogan, Sean Ryan, that ex SEAL who worked for the CIA Special Activities Division too. He interviewed the guy who owns Skinwalker Ranch, and they
Ooh,
talk about this computers. Sean Ryan. You look up
that
Sean Ryan
place
on
is
YouTube.
a zoo. And didn't he have to sell it? One of them, I mean, they had to sell that place.
No, he has it. This guy has it. He bought it from some people,
Yeah.
and he's been having it for the past 10, 15 years. And he talks about all the stuff that people communicate with one guy who lives there like 24 hours a
Wanda,
day, 7 days
did
a
you ever
week.
figure it out about the bulls? We did a space about the bulls. Everything about the bulls.
Um, why they're worshiping them?
Yeah, y'all talked about Giza. I was talking earlier about the bulls, the Apis bulls being the bodies that go in the pyramids in Giza. Because they're not for pharaohs. Pharaoh bodies haven't been found in there. People's names haven't been found in there. They don't use those pyramids for that. They are for energy. They are for energy. And they do use the bulls. But we see the bulls in the Sumerian text, and the sacred text sometimes speaks to why the bulls represent Anu, right? All of the Sumerians have the bovine horns
Yes.
on their heads. So they're
Right.
when they came down, they talk about taking animal inspiration and saying that this one represents me and this one represents me. That's why we have, like, in the Bible later on, the serpents representing this priesthood of the Elohim. Because Samael, the angel of death, is a part of the Elohim. That's how he's able to speak with authority, saying, no, that other God is not telling the truth. What he's not saying is true. He's trying to deceive you. You see what I'm saying? He was a part of, and so we have, like, the papal bull. Well, when we read the papal bull, okay, well, whose government and political structure were they copying in church? They were copying the Incan solar cult. So nothing from the Gentiles on the other side of the planet could give you those answers. They have like bulls carved in caves that predate any of their civilizations. Everything started over here. All of the sacred texts confirm that. This is why Professor was talking about, excuse me, all of the temples to everybody's religion being in the. It's on federal land now, all out in the out west. All of that is hiding what we just went through. So everybody's religion, everybody's temple, all of that is North American based, and everything from here is a derivative. But people who haven't studied our stuff over here, they don't know that. They don't know that. One of the ways we can kind of get that understanding is by looking at everybody's sacred text. When Professor Allah was breaking down the Ramayana and the Bhagavad Gita, we were literally just talking about these same things. It's interesting how these things are important to a lot of us. You don't really have to read them. They're really long. So if it's not an interest of yours, you could just listen to the audiobook on YouTube. But as the professor said, you're going to hear a lot of this advanced technology. But you're also going to be able to look across the globe and see who these people are saying they are in the book. So if you look at if you're American and you're familiar with the Bibles that Americans wrote before our information was taken by Franciscan missionaries to Europe and whipped up into the Bible, if you understand what we were doing over here, you know what's going on in Mount Shasta and how nothing that white degeneracy will discover can answer that. But if you look at our text, you understand who the bulls are. You understand who the owls are and why Drake uses the owls for OVO. He's not American, he's Canadian, copying something that comes from our Popol Vuh. Megan the Stallion is actively pulling from our Popol Vuh. People talking about Tory and her court case and lying and her documentary and all this stuff, but they're not reading our text, so they have all these questions. Everything is a reference to Africa and what they got and their advanced technology because people don't know. And it's not our fault. It's not chiefly our fault. We didn't throw our shit away. We didn't hide it and all this kind of stuff. But people who place less importance on American ancient scholarship and the stuff that Black people do know, if all of that is discarded, we're only going to be left with questions and transatlantic slave trade kind of conversations, and looking at Giza, and looking at uh, Godal Padang, and looking at Angkor Wat, and all of these places, and all of their ancient this, and you're not looking at the treaties that made you move off of your shit in the 1830s. We're not talking about 12,000, but even if you want to go to 12,000 years ago, we were over here before Egypt was doing anything over there, allegedly doing anything, because all of the Egypt stuff comes out of the Grand Canyon and Tennessee and Arkansas. We know that. We know the foundations of the stuff over here. Our pyramids are older. We have more. We have larger ones. We know how they're used. Our bodies are still in there. We still go to the mounds and use them. Doesn't matter if the masonry is off. All you did was take off the mica blocks that help conduct the electricity. I'm sitting on Twitter, rich, able to not have to work a 9 to 5 because I've done my rituals on the mounds and manifested the shit I needed, and get paid to do it for other people. That shit over there would work for those people if they were the people who built it. Their names, no African names are on it. They don't know how to use it. It's just sitting there. But niggas is in America using our mounds and putting it on Twitter. See, Sister LaShawn mentioned it earlier. Knowledge is useless unless you acknowledge it. There got to be some kind of action. So it can't just be dead things in books, because these things are not just history to us. If you're from here, you go to the grave and you perform the rituals. If you don't do that, then you can say, oh, I've been hit over the head. I've lost my culture. My language is taken from me. My food is taken from me. My everything. But if you're living on Indian territory, you're eating Indians' food, and you're still having family reunions, and you're still smoking tobacco and doing all of this shit, that's Indian culture. Doesn't matter what name you put on it. What's important is that you're preserving what your ancestors did, and you have an understanding of what they were worshiping and how they were worshiping before the colonists came over just the other day. Because I wasn't a part of the United States doing all of this stuff until 1830. But people have to look at that history. A lot of us don't have certain questions because we focus on our genealogy and the history that's concerning that, and the information that's ancient that's been passed down, not just to me as a high priest, but to other people who are pillars in our community. We focus a lot on that because we understand that things have been burned down, things have been flooded, things have been stolen, things have been lied on. And as we've been talking about, Rockefeller and Thomas Mann sponsored a whole McGraw-Hill brainwashing for everybody. We've had periods of almost 100 years of illiteracy where it was illegal for people to read and write. So you're not going to find us recording certain things in English. You might have to read Tutnese to understand what we were doing during certain periods. And then understand that everything wasn't the United States. So the United States is not going to have records. We were talking about this earlier. A guy's looking up shit in 16, and a guy from the Northeast, don't know nothing about Muskogee territory, don't know Muskogees, ain't got it in his lineage, is on Algonquin territory in the 1619 and 1685, screaming at a room full of Muskogees about why we don't have records of what they were doing and all of this, and you're not Indians and all of this. You're not looking at, we weren't a part of the United States until the 1830s, and you're not looking at our records. So you can't press us on you niggas were black and we weren't black yet. Y'all don't know nothing about what the South was doing. And y'all can't skip over Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, East Texas, Mississippi, Arkansas. Y'all can't skip over that. We had a whole Cato Confederacy, the Cato Hadacho. You're not talking about the Karakawans. You niggas don't know shit about the Natchez and the Tokugawa. You don't know nothing about the Ubatuba.
So quickly, I got to leave in a moment. But how do you manifest money?
You put the order in. We don't have a deity, so we go directly to the source. You get on the
The
vibration with the
professor
money.
gets to be rich immediately because he wants to spend all of his time talking and helping us. We gotta get
And right there,
we gotta
Absolutely.
and then
get
you
you
make it
rich.
plain, like the Bible says. You ask how much you want, and you give an offering. That's the short
What's a
answer.
good example of what's a good example of an
You got a
offering?
bull?
Or your firstborn son, But if you don't want to do that, you could just burn a blood
Oh,
offering of
That's
incense, like the Bible
bad
says.
stuff.
So just burn incense.
Um,
Burn incense.
that's it. I like doing that anyway. That's the offering? Oh, wow. I should be a bazillionaire at this point.
The Bible tells you 52 times, burn incense. It's the blood of the tree. You don't have to kill a lamb and,
I love
and
it.
do Passover. Although the Jews are supposed to do Passover. You think it's the Jews, y'all supposed to be doing Passover, killing lambs and
Yep.
stuff.
They definitely were doing that when I was trying to help them with their website. I said, "You killing a what? You going to do what in a river? You're about to go do what in your living room with I think it was a lamb or a goat. I can't remember. They were both doing it. The Arab people that I knew and the Israelis that I knew.
Juan, it's been a pleasure talking with you and Sister Nikki. Thank you so much, Professor, for
You
your grace. Thank you
too.
so much.
Come back.
Thank you for your grace. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
all right, ladies and gentlemen, I enjoyed y'all, and I will see y'all next time.
I wanted to ask a Anchor Watt question.
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to leave you with this thought.
Okay.
When they were talking about who influenced the designs on Angkor Wat, they
Hmm.
not they, but the lineage of the people, they said and indigenous influences. It was like these people, and indigenous influences. And I said, who are the indigenous influences? Oh, it's a ghost race. No, it's Negritos. Thank you very much. Have a nice night. Wow.
Wow.
We're calling them Negritos just because, that's the most popular name, but that's not technically the name that I would call them when I write about them. We'll talk about them
You're gonna
more often.
you're gonna call them Melanesian?
No, I'm telling you with different names. I mean, technically, they would be considered proto Austronesians because the Austronesians are the ones that sailed down to the islands, the Pacific Islands, the last group, just a few thousand years ago, and they created the Polynesians and the Micronesians. Melanesians are the darker people that are already established and part of the Australian group. But these other people, Professor, you're not going to be able to leave. You're going to mess up your life.
Uh
Oh, Mikhail is here.
oh.
I'm sorry. So those indigenous, they're always saying, and the indigenous people, and I go, well, who are those guys? We don't know. Why are they against these small framed little brown people from the pygmies to the negritos to the Khoisan? What is the hatred of these tiny people? What is the problem?
And hatred is built into the term form aboriginal. Abhor means to hate. Original means original. They're literally telling you they hate the original.
They hate their roots, and these people are the roots of everything. It's just really something else.
Yeah. Brother Mikhail, you got last words.
Thank you. Great, beautiful ones. See the Queen Wani, Queen Nikki, the King. Uh, just quickly, I had just to build with you guys, including the brother Jackson. I put some things in your DM, brother, that will give you the keys to unlocking the hidden knowledge of who we are, and the color of the skin, the bull aspects, the mounds, volcanoes, and how that knowledge and worldview became a part of the Anu Kush and the so-called Kemites. So, do you see it in your DM, brother professor? brother professor.
We might need a fallout room.
I'm up here talking to myself through a mute. Yeah, I see it, bro.
Okay, good. So start there. Start there. All the keys are there, and you are right that the so-called Atlanteans are the Keftil, um, and those are the ones that brought the Pyramidic civilization, uh, bull rituals, and even bull jumping. That concept,
Yes, that's over in East Africa, pretty prevalent, right?
right?
I
And they
saw
came
it.
from right. They came from there. So, and you could pass it on to Wani, and then you guys can do scholarship on it. But it's all there. So
Awesome. Appreciate it, bro.
you're welcome there, brother. Love you, family. I'll land. Thank you.
Good night.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. I enjoyed y'all, and I'll see y'all again tomorrow. Peace out.